The Orion Armada strikes Earth's lunar colony without warning. Defenses crumble. Thousands of colonists perish in moments. As the devastating news reaches Earth, panic spreads like wildfire across the globe. Military analysts work tirelessly, poring over data from the attack. Their conclusion sends shockwaves through high-level government briefings. Humanity's combined forces are no match for the Orion's superior technology. The United Nations Security Council convenes an emergency session, grappling with an existential threat to human existence. In a tense conference room, world leaders lean forward as a classified report is presented. It details a covert human military unit known as the Black Knights, Earth's most elite soldiers and pilots, training in secret for years to combat potential alien threats. After heated debate, the Security Council votes to deploy the Black Knights immediately. Light years away, aboard the Orion mothership, alien commander Mira receives new orders. Her mandibles click in anticipation as she begins coordinating a full-scale invasion of Earth. Mira's reputation for ruthless efficiency is well-earned, and she intends to crush any human resistance swiftly. As the Orion fleet enters Earth's orbit, a hidden base deep in the Mariana Trench stirs to life. The Black Knights launch, their advanced vessels slicing through the ocean's surface. Leading the squadron is Captain Stephen Taylor, a decorated veteran known for unorthodox tactics that confound both allies and enemies alike. Taylor's team employs cutting-edge stealth technology, rendering them invisible to Orion's sensors. They approach the alien armada undetected, tension mounting in each cockpit. At Taylor's command, the Black Knights unleash a surprise attack. Their weapons, specifically designed to penetrate Orion defenses, strike with pinpoint accuracy. Key Orion command ships erupt in flames. Confusion ripples through the alien fleet as they scramble to identify the threat. Commander Mira, watching from the bridge of her mothership, realizes with growing alarm that they've severely underestimated humanity's capabilities. The Black Knights press their advantage, systematically dismantling the invasion force. Their success spreads across Earth's communication channels, rekindling hope among the terrified populace. Cheers erupt in streets and bunkers alike as humans witness their defenders turning the tide of battle. Captain Taylor, seizing the initiative, leads a daring assault on Mira's mothership. Black Knight fighters weave through a barrage of alien fire, breaching the massive vessel's outer defenses. Precision strikes disable its main weapon systems, leaving the Orion Command Center vulnerable. As the battle rages, the Black Knights establish a foothold in space. Their unexpected resistance forces the Orions to reconsider their invasion strategy. Commander Mira, for the first time in her military career, faces the prospect of defeat. The stage is set for an epic conflict. Humanity, led by its secret champions, stands ready to fight for survival against a technologically superior foe. The Black Knights have changed the game, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit remains indomitable. As the Black Knights press their advantage against the Orion fleet, Captain Stephen Taylor's comm system crackled with an urgent transmission from Earth. His heart raced as he absorbed the dire news from the United Nations Security Council. A second, larger Orion Armada was rapidly approaching from the outer solar system. Taylor's mind raced through potential strategies. He knew their current success against the First Fleet would be short-lived if this new threat wasn't addressed. With seconds to spare, he devised a daring plan. "Alpha Team, maintain assault on primary fleet," Taylor ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Bravo Team, form up on me. We're going in." As his elite squad fell into formation behind him, Taylor set a course for Commander Mira's mothership. Their stealth technology, still undetected by Orion sensors, allowed them to slip past the chaos of the ongoing battle. "Sir, what's our objective?" Lieutenant Marcus Chen's voice came through the comm, a mix of excitement and apprehension evident in his tone. "We're going to hit them where it hurts, Chen," Taylor replied, his eyes fixed on the looming alien vessel. "We're boarding that mothership and taking control of their nav and comm systems. It's our best shot at countering this new threat." The Black Knight's ships docked with precision on the mothership's hull, cutting through the alien metal with advanced breaching tools. As the makeshift airlock sealed, Taylor led his team into the Orion vessel. Immediately, they were met with fierce resistance. Orion's security forces swarmed the corridors, their strange weaponry filling the air with sizzling energy bolts. The Black Knights responded with practiced efficiency, their years of training evident in every movement. Taylor ducked behind a twisted mass of alien technology, squeezing off several shots that dropped two Orions. To his left, Chen executed a perfect combat roll, coming up firing and taking out three more aliens in rapid succession. As they pushed deeper into the ship, the resistance intensified. In a particularly vicious firefight, Chen took a glancing hit to his side. Taylor saw his second-in-command stumble, clutching at the smoking wound. "Chen, fall back! We'll get you to safety!" Taylor shouted over the din of battle, but Chen shook his head, gritting his teeth against the pain. "Negative, sir. The mission comes first. I can still fight." Taylor nodded grimly, admiring Chen's drive while silently vowing to get his entire team out alive. As the Black Knights battled their way through the alien vessel, events were unfolding rapidly back on Earth. Dr. Evelyn Harper, hunched over her workstation in a high-security lab, let out a triumphant cry. "I've got it!" she exclaimed to her team of xenobiologists. "The Orions, they're hypersensitive to a specific EM frequency. We could use this to incapacitate them without harming our own forces." Within minutes, her discovery was relayed to the UN Security Council. The implications were clear. If they could develop a weapon to exploit this weakness, they might stand a chance against the overwhelming Orion forces. But to be truly effective, such a weapon would need to be deployed from within the alien fleet itself. Back on the mothership, Taylor and his team finally breached the central command center. The room erupted into chaos as the Black Knights engaged in close-quarters combat with the Orion crew. Taylor's expert marksmanship and Chen's lightning-fast reflexes, despite his injury, quickly turned the tide in their favor. As the last Orion fell, Taylor rushed to the main console. His fingers flew over the alien controls, guided by countless hours of training on simulated Orion systems. "Initiating data transfer now," he announced. "Let's see what we can learn about that second armada." Just then, a new alert flashed across the screen. Commander Mira, having learned of the human infiltration, was personally leading a counter-assault to retake the command center. Taylor's comm crackled again, this time with a message from Earth about Dr. Harper's discovery. The captain's mind raced as he processed this new information and the approaching threat. "Change of plans," Taylor announced to his team. "Chen, take half the squad and get that data back to Earth. It's crucial for our defense against the second armada." Chen hesitated, clearly torn between his duty and his desire to stand with his captain. "Sir, what about you?" Taylor's gaze swept over the alien technology surrounding them. "We're staying put. Earth needs us to deploy that EM weapon once it's ready. We'll hold this position and find a way to use their own systems against them." As Chen's group prepared to make their daring escape, Taylor and the remaining Black Knights began fortifying their position. They worked quickly, repurposing alien tech into makeshift barricades and defense systems. The sounds of approaching Orion forces echoed through the ship's corridors. Taylor checked his weapon and looked at his team, their faces a mix of drive and grim persistence. "All right, people," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Let's show these aliens what the Black Knights can really do." The air crackled with tension as Captain Taylor and his remaining Black Knights transformed the alien command center into a makeshift fortress. Repurposed Orion technology hummed and pulsed around them, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. Taylor's eyes darted between his team and the alien consoles, their eerie glow casting long shadows across the room. "Simmons, reinforce that barricade. Johnson, I need eyes on every approach vector." As his team worked feverishly, Taylor's mind raced. The knowledge of the second Orion Armada deeply affected on him, but he pushed the thought aside. "Focus on the now," he reminded himself. Suddenly, a flicker of movement on one of the screens caught his attention. Taylor leaned in, his eyes widening as he processed the information scrolling across the display. "Sir," Private Rodriguez called out, her voice tight with urgency. "I'm picking up massive energy signatures closing in on our position. It's got to be Commander Mira and her forces." Taylor nodded grimly. "All right, people. This is it. Remember your training and watch each other's backs. The distant sound of Orion weapons fire grew louder, punctuated by the thunderous impacts of breaching charges. Taylor's hand tightened on his rifle as he took up position behind a hastily constructed barricade. Just then, his eyes fell on a strange device nestled among the alien technology. Its design was unlike anything he'd seen before, with pulsing lights and an oddly organic feel. Acting on instinct, Taylor reached out and placed his hand on its surface. The world exploded into light and sensation. Taylor gasped as his mind was flooded with a torrent of alien data. Images, sounds, and concepts he couldn't begin to comprehend cascaded through his consciousness. When the deluge subsided, Taylor found himself intimately connected to the mothership's systems. He could feel the vast vessel as if it were an extension of his own body. "Captain?" Simmons's voice sounded distant and muffled. "Are you all right?" Taylor blinked, coming back to himself. "I'm fine," he managed, his voice hoarse. "Better than fine, actually. I think I've just found our ace in the hole." With a thought, Taylor activated the ship's internal defense systems. Bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off entire sections of the vessel. Security force fields sprang to life, creating an impenetrable maze between Mira's forces and the command center. "Holy shit," Johnson breathed, watching the ship's schematics on a nearby screen. "How did you do that, sir?" Taylor allowed himself a small smile. "Let's just say I've got a new trick up my sleeve. Now, let's put it to good use." Meanwhile, light years away, Earth had become a hive of frantic activity. In laboratories across the globe, scientists worked around the clock, poring over the data transmitted by Lieutenant Chen's team. Dr. Evelyn Harper stood at the center of the storm, her eyes burning with persistence as she directed her team of xenobiologists. Holographic displays filled the air around her, each one displaying a different aspect of Orion physiology. "The EM frequency affects their neural pathways," she explained, her fingers dancing across a floating keyboard. "If we can amplify it enough, we could potentially incapacitate their entire fleet." One of her colleagues, Dr. Patel, looked up from his workstation. "But Evelyn, generating a pulse that powerful, it would require more energy than anything we have on Earth." Harper nodded, a grim smile playing across her lips. "You're right. That's why we're not going to use anything on Earth." Understanding dawned on Dr. Patel's face. "The mothership's core." "Exactly," Harper confirmed. "It's the only power source capable of generating a pulse strong enough to affect the entire Orion fleet." As the scientists raced against time, the battle in Earth's orbit reached a fever pitch. The Black Knight fighters weaved and dove through the chaos, their advanced weapons tearing through Orion defenses. But for every alien ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The human forces were slowly being pushed back, their losses mounting with each passing minute. Aboard her stealth shuttle, Major Sarah Hawkins gritted her teeth as she maneuvered through a storm of enemy fire. In the cargo hold behind her, Lieutenant Chen and his team held on for dear life, the stolen Orion data secured in a heavily armored case. "Hang on back there," Hawkins called out as she barrel-rolled to avoid a barrage of plasma bolts. "This ride's about to get a whole lot bumpier." Chen managed a weak chuckle. "Just get us home in one piece, Major. Earth needs this data if we're going to have any chance against that second armada." As Hawkins's shuttle streaked towards the relative safety of Earth's atmosphere, the UN Security Council convened in an underground bunker. The room was filled with grim-faced world leaders, their attention fixed on a holographic display of the solar system. General Zhao, her uniform crisp despite the dire circumstances, addressed the assembly. "The second Orion fleet has entered the Kuiper Belt. At their current speed, they'll reach Earth in less than 48 hours. A murmur of dismay rippled through the room. The U.S. president leaned forward, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. "What about Dr. Harper's weapon? Is it ready?" "Almost," General Zhao replied. "But deploying it will be our greatest challenge yet. We need to get it to Captain Taylor on the Orion mothership, and we need to do it fast." As the Security Council debated strategies, Commander Mira stalked through the corridors of her ship, her elite guard close behind. Her mandibles clicked in barely held-back rage as she encountered yet another sealed bulkhead. "These humans are more resourceful than we anticipated," she hissed to her second-in-command. "But they cannot hide forever. We will crush them, and then we will rain fire upon their pathetic world." With a gesture, she signaled her technicians forward. They set to work on the sealed door, their tools sparking as they attempted to override Taylor's lockdown. Back in the command center, Captain Taylor felt the Orion's efforts like an itch in the back of his mind. He focused, using his newfound connection to the ship, to throw up additional barriers and false trails. "They're persistent, I'll give them that," he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead from the mental strain. Private Rodriguez looked up from her makeshift sensor array. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission from Earth. It's Dr. Harper. She says they've done it. They've created the weapon." Taylor's heart raced with a mixture of hope and apprehension. They had a chance, but the hardest part was yet to come. As he opened his mouth to respond, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Commander Mira's voice echoed through the corridors, filled with cold fury. "I'm coming for you, humans. And when I find you, you'll wish you had never set foot on my ship." Taylor turned to his team, his heart made. "All right, people, this is it. We hold this position at all costs. Earth is counting on us, and we will not let them down." As the sounds of approaching Orion forces grew louder, Taylor and his Black Knights readied themselves for the fight of their lives. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and the final confrontation was about to begin. The command center shuddered as another explosion rocked the mothership, closer this time. Taylor's eyes darted to the alien displays, his mind racing to process the information flooding through the neural interface. "They've broken through the outer defenses," he announced, his voice tight. "Prepare for close-quarters combat." As if on cue, the massive doors at the far end of the command center began to glow red-hot, the metal warping under the intense heat of Orion weapons fire. Taylor's remaining Black Knights took up defensive positions, their faces set with grim purpose. The neural link pulsed in Taylor's mind, and he gasped as a sudden flood of fragmented alien knowledge washed over him. Images of Orion battle tactics and schematics of advanced weaponry flashed through his consciousness. "Sir?" Private Rodriguez called out, concern evident in her voice. Taylor shook his head, trying to clear it. "I'm all right. This interface, it's giving me insight into their tactics. We might have an edge." Before he could elaborate, the doors exploded inward in a shower of molten metal and acrid smoke. Orion soldiers poured through the opening, their energy weapons spitting deadly bolts of plasma. The Black Knights responded with a withering hail of gunfire, their advanced weaponry tearing through the first wave of alien attackers. Taylor used his newfound knowledge to anticipate the Orion's movements, calling out warnings and targets to his team. "Flanking maneuver on the left," he shouted, and Rodriguez pivoted just in time to drop two Orions attempting to circle around their position. As the battle raged within the command center, a small, sleek shuttle slipped through the chaos of the space battle outside. Major John Hawkins, his eyebrows furrowed, piloted the craft towards a damaged section of the mothership's hull. "Team, prepare for insertion," he ordered, his voice steady despite the gravity of their mission. "Remember, we get in, deliver the package, and get out. The fate of Earth depends on it." The shuttle shuddered as it made contact with the mothership's hull. Cutting torches flared to life, carving an entry point into the alien vessel. As soon as the opening was wide enough, Hawkins and his team poured into the ship, their weapons at the ready. They found themselves in a dimly lit corridor, the air thick with the acrid smell of damaged systems. Hawkins consulted a holographic map projected from his wrist computer, orienting himself within the massive ship. "This way," he whispered, gesturing down a long, curving hallway. "The command center should be about 2 clicks in that direction." As they moved deeper into the ship, the sounds of battle grew louder. Suddenly, a new type of Orion soldier appeared at the far end of the corridor. These troopers were larger than the ones they had encountered before, their armor sleek and menacing. "Take cover!" Hawkins yelled as the enhanced Orions opened fire with weapons that seemed to bend light itself. The human squad dove behind alien structural supports, returning fire with their own advanced weapons. The air crackled with energy as both sides exchanged shots, the corridor lighting up with flashes of blue and green. Private Chen, one of Hawkins's team members, leaned out to take a shot and caught a glancing hit from one of the alien weapons. He cried out in pain as his armor sizzled and smoked. Adaptive armor, Chen gasped, examining the damage. It's adjusting to our weapons in real time. Hawkins gritted his teeth. They hadn't anticipated this level of technological advancement. Fall back to the next junction, he ordered. We need to find another way around. As they retreated, Hawkins activated his comlink. This is Major Hawkins to any Earth forces on this vessel. We are carrying a Priority 1 package and require assistance. Does anyone copy? Meanwhile, in the command center, Taylor's team was being slowly pushed back by the relentless Orion assault. The captain's connection to the ship's systems was becoming erratic, damaged by the ongoing battle. Sir! Simmons called out, ducking behind a console as energy bolts sizzled overhead. I'm picking up a transmission. It's from another human team. Taylor's eyes widened as he heard Major Hawkins's message. He quickly assessed the situation, realizing that this new team must be carrying the electromagnetic weapon Dr. Harper had developed. Using the last vestiges of his control over the ship's systems, Taylor managed to access the internal security network. He saw Hawkins' team pinned down by the enhanced Orion soldiers, several corridors away from their position. Rodriguez, Johnson, Taylor barked. Hold this position. Simmons, you're with me. We're going to link up with that team and get them here with the weapon. As Taylor and Simmons prepared to leave the relative safety of their fortified position, a towering figure stepped through the smoke at the entrance to the command center. Commander Mira, her alien features twisted in a snarl of rage, leveled a massive energy weapon at the humans. You have defiled my ship for the last time, she hissed, her voice dripping with malice. Now, you will watch as I destroy your pathetic planet before I end your miserable lives. Taylor raised his weapon, his mind racing to find a way out of this impossible situation. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, with Major Hawkins and his team carrying humanity's last hope, now trapped just out of reach. In orbit around Earth, the second Orion Armada began to engage the planet's defenses. The sky lit up with the flashes of energy weapons and explosions, a deadly light show that heralded humanity's darkest hour. As the battle raged on multiple fronts, the clock ticked down towards Earth's possible extinction. The outcome would be decided in the next few moments, aboard an alien ship far from home, where a handful of brave souls fought against overwhelming odds. Taylor's finger tightened on the trigger, his eyes locked with Commander Mira's. The tension in the command center was palpable, the air thick with the acrid smell of weapon discharges and burning circuitry. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the room, but it didn't come from either of their weapons. A section of the wall behind Commander Mira exploded inward, showering the area with debris. Through the newly formed opening stumbled Major John Hawkins and his two remaining squad members, their armor scorched and dented. Captain Taylor, Hawkins called out, his voice hoarse. We have the package. Commander Mira whirled around, momentarily distracted by the new threat. Taylor seized the opportunity, diving behind a nearby console for cover. Get down, he shouted to Hawkins's team as plasma bolts sizzled through the air where they had been standing. As the two human groups converged, Taylor felt a searing pain lance through his skull. The neural interface pulsed, flooding his mind with a torrent of alien data. He gritted his teeth, trying to maintain focus on the battle at hand. The weapon, Taylor gasped, gesturing to the device Hawkins carried. We need to connect it to the ship's core. Hawkins nodded, but his expression was grim. Sir, we received a partial transmission from Earth. Something about the weapon's capabilities, but the message was garbled. We only caught fragments. Before Taylor could respond, the ship lurched violently. Gravity seemed to shift, sending everyone stumbling. Consoles flickered, and the lights dimmed momentarily. What's happening? Rodriguez shouted, steadying herself against a bulkhead. Taylor's eyes glazed over, his consciousness split between the physical world and the ship's systems. It's me, he said, his voice distant. The interface, it's overwhelming. I can't control it. Simmons moved to Taylor's side, concern etched on his face. Sir, we need to disconnect you from the system. It's killing you. Taylor shook his head, wincing at the movement. No time. Need to maintain control. Buy you time. As if to emphasize his point, Bulkheads throughout the ship sealed shut with a resounding clang. Commander Mira snarled in frustration, barking orders into her communicator. "You think this will stop me?" she hissed, her mandibles clicking in anger. "I will tear this ship apart if I have to." Hawkins turned to Taylor, his expression grave. "Captain, we need to make a decision. Do we disconnect you or proceed with the original plan?" Taylor's body convulsed as another wave of data washed over him. Through the haze of pain, he saw flashes of Earth's defenses crumbling, of a massive Orion weapon charging to unleash devastation on his home planet. "No choice," Taylor ground out. "Use the core. It's our only shot." Hawkins nodded, motioning to his team. They quickly began setting up the electromagnetic weapon, connecting it to the ship's systems under Taylor's pained guidance. Outside the command center, the sound of metal tearing echoed through the corridors. Commander Mira's voice boomed over the ship's speakers. "You cannot hide forever, humans. Your pathetic resistance ends now." As Hawkins's team worked feverishly to integrate the weapon, Taylor's control over the ship became increasingly erratic. Gravity fluctuated wildly, and systems throughout the vessel sparked and shorted out. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, her eyes wide as she stared at a holographic display. "The Orion flagship. It's targeting Earth with some kind of superweapon." Taylor's mind raced, fighting against the overwhelming tide of alien knowledge threatening to drown his consciousness. He could see the weapon charging, feel the immense energy building within it. "Hawkins?" Taylor gasped, blood trickling from his nose. "Whatever that weapon does, it needs to work now." Major Hawkins finished the final connections, his hands steady despite the chaos around them. "It's ready, but sir, we don't know exactly what it'll do. The message from Earth—" Before he could finish, the bulkhead nearest to them began to glow red-hot. Commander Mira's voice rang out, closer now, filled with cold fury. "I'm coming for you, humans. Your extinction begins here." Taylor looked at Hawkins, his eyes clearing for a moment as he made his decision. "Activate it. Now." Hawkins hesitated for a split second, then slammed his hand down on the activation switch. The electromagnetic weapon hummed to life, drawing power from the ship's core. Energy crackled along conduits and arced between consoles. As the weapon reached full power, Taylor let out an agonized scream. His body arched, electricity coursing through him as the neural interface overloaded. The ship's systems went haywire, displays flickering wildly as the electromagnetic pulse built to its crescendo. In orbit around Earth, the Orion flagship superweapon reached full charge, its target locked on humanity's homeworld. The Black Knights, led by Major Sarah Hawkins, streaked towards it in a desperate last stand. Aboard the mothership, Commander Mira burst through the weakened bulkhead, her exosuit gleaming in the chaotic light of the command center. She raised her weapon, aiming at the prone form of Captain Taylor. At that moment, the electromagnetic weapon unleashed its full fury. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the mothership, expanding outward in all directions. The command center was engulfed in a sea of crackling blue-white light, as the fate of two species hung in the balance. Balance as a sea of crackling blue-white light engulfed everything in its path. Time seemed to stand still as the electromagnetic pulse surged through the mothership's systems. Captain Taylor's body went rigid, his back arching as electricity coursed through him. The neural interface, now overloaded with the combined power of the ship's core and the electromagnetic weapon, threatened to burn out his mind entirely. Major Hawkins, his hand still on the activation switch, watched in awe as the pulse expanded rapidly. The command center's systems flickered and sparked, consoles shorting out in cascading waves of electrical discharge. Commander Mira, caught mid-stride, stumbled as the pulse hit her. Her exosuit sparked and sputtered, its advanced systems overwhelmed by the unexpected attack. "It's working!" Simmons shouted over the din of crackling energy and failing systems. "The Orions are going down." Indeed, the alien soldiers who had been pressing their attack moments ago now collapsed to the ground, their bodies twitching as the specialized frequency overwhelmed their biology. Commander Mira let out an inhuman screech of pain and rage before her exosuit finally gave out, sending her crashing to the floor. As the pulse continued to expand beyond the confines of the mothership, Hawkins turned his attention to the external displays. The holographic screens, flickering and distorted, showed the pulse washing over the Orion fleet. Ship after ship lost power, their energy systems disrupted by the electromagnetic attack. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, her eyes wide as she stared at a rapidly changing tactical display. "The flagship, it's—" Before she could finish, a massive explosion bloomed in space. The Orion flagship, its superweapon moments away from firing on Earth, erupted in a spectacular ball of fire. The Black Knight's audacious attempt had paid off, but at a terrible cost. Hawkins felt a pang of grief, knowing his sister Sarah had likely been at the center of that explosion. He pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the task at hand. "Status report," he barked, scanning the room for any remaining threats. "Orion forces neutralized, sir," Simmons reported, checking the life signs of the fallen aliens. "They're alive but completely incapacitated." "The fleet?" Hawkins asked, moving to a still functional console. Rodriguez pulled up a damaged but readable tactical display. It's incredible, sir. The entire Orion armada is dead in the water. Their ships are just drifting out there." A weak groan drew their attention. Captain Taylor, still connected to the neural interface, slumped in his chair. Blood trickled from his nose and ears, his eyes unfocused and glassy. "Captain!" Hawkins rushed to Taylor's side, checking his pulse. It was weak and erratic. "We need to disconnect him from the interface now!" As Simmons and Rodriguez worked to carefully remove the neural link, Hawkins surveyed the chaos around them. The command center, once a pinnacle of alien technology, now lay in ruins. Sparks flew from damaged conduits, and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air. Outside, the vast Orion fleet hung motionless against the backdrop of Earth. The planet below, moments ago on the brink of annihilation, now stood as a silent witness to humanity's unlikely victory. "Sir," Simmons said, his voice tight with concern. "The captain's not responding. His vitals are all over the place." Hawkins looked down at Taylor's unconscious form, the weight of their success tempered by the cost. "We need to get him to medical, fast, and we need to secure this ship. There's no telling how long the Orions will stay down." As if in response to his words, a tremor ran through the ship. The remaining functional displays flickered, showing multiple systems failing across the vessel. "Major," Rodriguez called out, her hands flying over a console. "We're losing stability. Whatever the captain did to amplify the pulse, it's torn the ship's systems apart. We need to evacuate." Hawkins nodded grimly. "All right, let's move. Grab the captain and any intel we can carry. We need to get word to Earth about what's happened here." As they prepared to leave, Hawkins cast one last look at the fallen form of Commander Mira. The Orion leader, so terrifying and seemingly invincible moments ago, now lay helpless on the cold deck of her own ship. The team made their way through the corridors of the mothership, stepping over the bodies of incapacitated Orion soldiers. Emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows as they navigated the labyrinthine vessel. The ship groaned and shuddered around them, a dying leviathan in its final throes. Reaching the hangar bay, they found their shuttle miraculously intact. As they boarded, Hawkins activated the communications array, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Major John Hawkins to any Earth forces. The Orion fleet has been neutralized. I repeat, the Orion fleet has been neutralized. We have wounded and are evacuating the mothership. Request immediate assistance and containment protocol for disabled Orion vessels." As the shuttle lifted off, pulling away from the failing mothership, Hawkins looked out at the field of drifting Orion ships. The immediate threat had been eliminated, but he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity now faced the monumental task of dealing with the incapacitated alien forces and the treasure trove of advanced technology suddenly within their grasp. The shuttle streaked towards Earth, carrying with it the heroes of humanity's darkest hour and the uncertain promise of a new dawn. As they descended through the atmosphere, the full magnitude of what they had accomplished began to sink in. They had saved Earth, but at a great cost. The real work of securing humanity's future was just beginning. The real work of securing humanity's future was just starting. As the shuttle pierced through Earth's atmosphere, Major Hawkins received an urgent transmission from the United Nations Security Council. Admiral Marcus Chen's face appeared on the small view screen, his expression a mixture of relief and commitment. Major Hawkins, we've received your transmission. Excellent work out there. We're mobilizing every available vessel to secure the Orion fleet. What's your status? Hawkins glanced at Captain Taylor's unconscious form, still connected to the alien neural interface. We have wounded, sir. Captain Taylor is in critical condition. The interface, it's done something to him. We need immediate medical assistance upon landing. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. Understood. I'm dispatching medical teams to your landing site. We'll need a full debriefing as soon as possible. As the shuttle touched down at a secure military facility, a flurry of activity erupted around them. Medical personnel rushed forward, carefully transferring Captain Taylor onto a gurney. Hawkins watched as they whisked him away, the alien technology still pulsing with an eerie blue light where it connected to Taylor's temples. Major Hawkins! A voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Evelyn Harper, Earth's leading xenotechnologist, strode towards him purposefully. I need every scrap of data you managed to retrieve from that ship. We're assembling a team to begin deciphering the Orion technology immediately. Hawkins handed over a data drive, his movements mechanical as exhaustion began to set in. It's not much, Doctor. Most of our systems were fried in the pulse, but it's a start. Dr. Harper's eyes gleamed with excitement as she clutched the drive. A start is all we need. This could revolutionize our understanding of... She was cut off by the arrival of General William Stryker, his face set in hard lines as he surveyed the scene. Doctor, you'll get your chance to play with the alien toys. Right now, we need to focus on securing those ships before the Orions wake up. Hawkins straightened, pushing aside his fatigue. Sir, about the Orions... Save it for the debriefing, Major, Stryker interrupted. We're wheels up in 5. You're coming with us to oversee the boarding operations. Within minutes, Hawkins found himself on a military transport, part of a massive fleet heading towards the disabled Orion ships. As they approached, he could see the massive alien vessels drifting silently in Earth's orbit, their sleek forms now rendered impotent by the electromagnetic pulse. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the comms. All units, prepare for boarding operations. Remember, we don't know how long these aliens will stay down. Secure critical areas first. Engineering, bridge, weapon systems. Use lethal force only if absolutely necessary. As they docked with the nearest Orion vessel, Hawkins led his team through the airlock. The interior of the ship was bathed in dim emergency lighting, creating an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. They moved swiftly through the corridors, stepping over the prone forms of incapacitated Orion crew members. Major, one of his team called out, I've got movement up ahead. Hawkins raised his hand, signaling the team to halt. As they watched, an Orion soldier stumbled to its feet, mandibles clicking in confusion. Before it could fully regain its senses, Hawkins's team had it surrounded and subdued. Looks like they're starting to wake up, Hawkins muttered into his comm. All teams be advised. Orion crew members are showing signs of recovery. Proceed with caution. As they pressed deeper into the ship, securing vital areas and containing any conscious Orions they encountered, Hawkins couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The electromagnetic pulse had given them an incredible advantage. But how long would it last? And what would happen when the Orions fully regained consciousness? Back on Earth, in a high-security medical facility, a team of doctors huddled around Captain Stephen Taylor's bed. The alien neural interface continued to pulse rhythmically, defying all attempts to safely remove it. Dr. Samantha Lee, the lead neurologist, shook her head in frustration. Every time we try to disconnect it, his vital signs go haywire. It's like the interface has become a part of him. As if in response to her words, Taylor's eyes suddenly snapped open. But instead of his normal brown irises, they glowed with the same eerie blue light as the alien technology. His mouth opened, and when he spoke, it was with a voice that seemed to echo with otherworldly knowledge. The key, he rasped, his gaze unfocused. The key to everything is here. The medical team exchanged worried glances as alarms began to blare. On screens throughout the facility, alien symbols began to scroll rapidly, a flood of information pouring forth from the connection between Taylor and the Orion systems. In orbit, aboard the captured Orion mothership, a previously dormant console suddenly flickered to life. New coordinates appeared on the screen, pointing to the outer reaches of the solar system. Something was coming, and Earth's brief moment of victory was about to be challenged in ways they could never have imagined. The coordinates on the Orion mothership's console pulsed insistently, drawing the attention of the human technicians who had been working tirelessly to decipher the alien systems. One of them, a young specialist named Alexei Volkov, leaned in to examine the display more closely. "Sir," he called out to Major Hawkins, who was overseeing the secured command center, "I think you need to see this." Hawkins strode over, his brow furrowing as he took in the alien symbols and the ominous red marker indicating a location in the outer solar system. "What are we looking at, Specialist?" "It appears to be some kind of automated alert, sir," Volkov explained, his fingers dancing over the alien interface. "It activated moments ago, seemingly on its own." Before Hawkins could respond, his comm unit crackled to life. Admiral Chen's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Major, we've got a situation. Captain Taylor's condition has taken a turn. Dr. Harper is requesting your presence immediately." Hawkins exchanged a worried glance with Volkov. "Keep working on decoding that alert," he ordered. "I want to know what it means and where it's pointing to." With that, Hawkins rushed out of the command center, making his way through the labyrinthine corridors of the Orion mothership. He arrived at the makeshift medical bay to find it in a state of controlled chaos. Dr. Evelyn Harper stood at the center of the storm, her face a mask of concentration as she directed her team. Captain Taylor lay on a gurney, surrounded by a mix of human and salvaged Orion medical equipment. The neural interface still pulsed with that eerie blue light, seeming to have grown more integrated with Taylor's skull. "Doctor," Hawkins called out as he approached, "what's happening?" Harper turned to him, her eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and concern. "Major, we're witnessing something extraordinary. Captain Taylor's mind, it's not just connected to the Orion systems. It's becoming a hybrid of human and Orion neural patterns." As if to emphasize her point, Taylor's body suddenly arched off the gurney, his eyes snapping open. Instead of their usual brown, they glowed with the same blue light as the interface. "The key," Taylor rasped, his voice a discordant mix of human and something alien. "The key to everything is here." Hawkins stepped closer, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. "Captain, can you hear me?" Taylor's head turned towards him, his glowing eyes seeming to look through Hawkins rather than at him. "Fleets, bases, scattered across the stars. We see them all." Dr. Harper moved quickly, adjusting settings on her equipment. His brain activity is off the charts. It's as if he's processing vast amounts of information. Suddenly, holographic displays flickered to life throughout the medical bay, startling the medical team. A three-dimensional star map materialized in the air, dotted with pulsing red markers. "My God," Harper breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the galactic display. "These must be Orion locations, fleet positions, bases." Hawkins felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the implications. "Doctor, we need to stabilize him. This information could be crucial." As Harper and her team worked feverishly to manage Taylor's condition, Hawkins's comm unit buzzed again. This time, it was General Stryker's gruff voice that came through. "Major, we've got a situation developing on one of the captured cruisers. A group of Orion prisoners have managed to barricade themselves in engineering. Admiral Chen is assembling a strike team, and I want you to lead it." Hawkins looked from Taylor to the star map, torn between the unfolding situations. "Understood, sir. I'm on my way." As he turned to leave, Dr. Harper caught his arm. "Major, what we're seeing here, it's beyond anything we could have imagined. Captain Taylor might be the key to understanding the Orions, their technology, their entire civilization." Hawkins nodded grimly. "Keep him stable, Doctor, and secure that data. If the Orions realize what we now have access to—" He left the sentence unfinished as he rushed out, heading towards the shuttle bay. As he moved, he could feel the weight of recent events pressing down on him. They had won a battle, but the war, it seemed, was a long way to go. Boarding a waiting shuttle, Hawkins found a team of Earth's best soldiers already prepped and ready. As they launched towards the Orion cruiser, he briefed them on the situation. "We've got an unknown number of hostile aliens who've managed to reactivate part of the ship's systems," he explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Our primary objective is to neutralize the threat and prevent them from regaining full control of the vessel." As the shuttle approached the cruiser, Hawkins could see other Earth ships converging on the area. Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm, providing last-minute intelligence. "Major, we've identified the leader of the uprising. It's a high-ranking Orion officer named Kraz. Be advised, he may have access to command codes we haven't cracked yet." The shuttle docked with a metallic clang, and Hawkins led his team into the alien ship. The corridors were eerily quiet, the emergency lighting casting long shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. As they approached engineering, the sound of alien voices and the hum of reactivated systems grew louder. Hawkins held up a fist, signaling his team to halt. He activated a portable scanner, a piece of tech that Earth scientists had quickly adapted from Orion designs. "I'm reading multiple Orion life signs just ahead," he whispered, "and energy signatures consistent with their weapons." He was about to give the order to move in when a piercing alarm suddenly blared through the ship. The engineering doors slid open, and a group of Orion soldiers poured out, their weapons charged and ready. At their head was a towering Orion, his armor more ornate than the others. Kraz, Hawkins realized, as he raised his own weapon. The two forces faced each other in the narrow corridor, a moment of tense silence stretching between them. Then, with a chittering cry from Kraz, the battle for control of the Orion cruiser began in earnest. Hawkins and his team opened fire, their weapons spitting out bursts of high-energy plasma. The Orions returned fire, their own weapons creating an eerie light show in the confined space. "Push forward!" Hawkins shouted over the din of battle. "We can't let them retake engineering." The human soldiers advanced, using the corridor's twists and turns for cover. Hawkins caught sight of Kraz, the Orion leader, barking orders to his troops. The alien's four eyes blazed with persistence as he coordinated his forces. Suddenly, Hawkins's comm crackled to life. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Major, we've got a situation developing. Long-range sensors have detected a massive object near Mars. We need you to wrap this up and report back immediately." Hawkins gritted his teeth. "Understood, Admiral. We'll finish this quickly." With renewed urgency, Hawkins signaled his team to execute a pincer maneuver. Half the squad laid down suppressing fire while the others flanked the Orions. Caught in the crossfire, the alien soldiers began to fall. Kraz, realizing the battle was lost, made a desperate lunge for a nearby control panel. Hawkins, anticipating the move, dove forward and tackled the Orion leader. They grappled on the floor, a furious tangle of human and alien limbs. With a swift move, Hawkins managed to subdue Kraz, pinning the alien's arms behind his back. "It's over," he growled. "Stand down." As the last of the Orion resistance crumbled, Hawkins's team secured engineering. He tapped his comm. "Admiral, engineering is secure. What's the situation with Mars?" Chen's reply was terse. "Return to the command ship immediately, Major. You need to see this for yourself." Within the hour, Hawkins found himself standing on the bridge of the Earth flagship, staring at a holographic display of the solar system. The image zoomed in on Mars, revealing an enormous structure that had appeared in orbit around the red planet. "My God," Hawkins breathed. "What is that thing?" Admiral Chen stepped forward, his face grim. "We're calling it the Titan's Forge. It's an Orion battle station, and it makes their mothership look like a toy in comparison." As they watched, the colossal structure settled into a stable orbit around Mars. Its purpose was unclear, but its presence sent a chill down Hawkins's spine. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving an urgent transmission from Earth. It's about Captain Taylor." Chen nodded and the main screen flickered to life, showing Dr. Harper's face. She looked exhausted but excited. "Admiral, Major, we've had a breakthrough. Captain Taylor has regained consciousness and he's different." The feed switched to show Taylor sitting up in his hospital bed. His eyes, once brown, now glowed with an otherworldly blue light. When he spoke, his voice carried an eerie resonance. "The Titan's Forge," Taylor said, his gaze unfocused. "It's not just a weapon. It's a mobile factory, capable of producing entire fleets of warships." Hawkins and Chen exchanged shocked glances. The implications were staggering. "There's more," Taylor continued. "I can see everything. The Orion fleet positions, their bases scattered across the galaxy, and—" his voice faltered. "Reinforcements are coming from their nearest outpost. They'll be here in less than 2 weeks." The bridge fell silent as the weight of Taylor's words sank in. Humanity had won a battle, but the war was just the beginning. In fact, it was about to escalate beyond their wildest imaginations. Admiral Chen was the first to break the silence. "We need to act fast. Major Hawkins, I want you to coordinate with General Stryker. We need to adapt the Orion shield technology to protect Earth." Hawkins nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "What about the Titan's Forge, sir? We can't let the Orions keep control of it." Chen's eyes narrowed with commitment. "You're right. We need to capture it, and I think I know how we might do it." As Chen began outlining his plan, Hawkins couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and excitement. The next few days would determine the fate of not just Earth, but potentially the entire galaxy. In the medical bay of the captured Orion mothership, Dr. Harper worked tirelessly to stabilize Captain Taylor's condition. The neural interface had integrated itself even further into his brain, creating a unique symbiosis of human and Orion neural patterns. "Captain," Harper said softly, "can you tell us more about what you're seeing?" Taylor's glowing eyes focused on her. "It's overwhelming. I can access the entire Orion database, their history, their technology, their strategies. But it's more than that. I can feel their thoughts, their motivations." As Taylor spoke, holographic displays throughout the medical bay came to life, showing star maps, ship schematics, and streams of alien data. Harper and her team worked frantically to record and analyze the information. Meanwhile, on Earth, General William Stryker stood in the heart of Project Phoenix, surrounded by a team of engineers and scientists. They pored over the Orion shield technology, working to adapt it for Earth's defenses. "We need to move faster," Stryker barked. "Those reinforcements will be here before we know it. And I want updates on the hybrid fighter program. If we're going to stand a chance against the Orions, we need to match their tech." As Earth prepared for the coming storm, Admiral Chen assembled an elite team for the mission to capture the Titan's Forge. To everyone's surprise, he included a group of Orion prisoners who had chosen to defect. "I know this is unorthodox," Chen explained to a skeptical Hawkins, "but we need every advantage we can get. These defectors know Orion systems better than we ever could." Among the defectors was a young Orion scientist named Lyra. She approached Dr. Harper with an offer of assistance. "Not all of us agree with the Empire's actions," Lyra explained, her alien features set in a determined expression. "We want to help you, to change the course of our civilization." As the preparations for Operation Titan's Fall reached their final stages, Captain Taylor was moved to a specially designed vessel. The ship allowed him to interface directly with Orion systems, potentially giving them control over the massive battle station. The fleet assembled near Earth's moon, a mix of retrofitted human ships and captured Orion vessels. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship, surveying the assembled forces. "This is it," he announced over the fleet-wide channel. "The fate of Earth, and possibly the galaxy, rests on the success of this mission. Let's make history." As the fleet began its journey towards Mars, the Titan's Forge loomed in the distance, a colossal shadow against the red planet. Its defenses began to activate, responding to the approaching threat. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. The fleet surged forward, a mix of human ingenuity and Orion technology united against a common foe. As they approached Mars, the Titan's Forge came into view, its massive form dwarfing even the largest ships in Chen's fleet. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral Chen's voice rang out across the comm channels. "This is what we've trained for. Execute Operation Titan's Fall." The Titan's Forge, now fully alert to the incoming threat, bristled with activity. Massive energy shields flickered to life around the station, their iridescent glow a stark contrast against the red Martian backdrop. Hundreds of automated defense turrets emerged from hidden compartments along its surface, their barrels tracking the approaching fleet. Aboard his specially designed interface vessel, Captain Taylor closed his eyes, his mind diving into the alien cyberscape. The Orion systems pulsed around him, a dizzying array of data streams and security protocols. "I'm in," Taylor's voice crackled over the comm, strained with concentration. "Their defenses are formidable. This might take some time." Admiral Chen nodded grimly. "Do what you can, Captain. We'll buy you that time." He turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy the fleet, three-pronged attack formation, just as we planned." The human fleet split into three groups. Chen led the main assault group, pushing directly towards the Titan's Forge's outer defenses. A second group of smaller, more agile craft peeled away, aiming to outflank the station and target its propulsion systems. The third group, consisting of stealth ships carrying boarding parties, hung back, waiting for their moment to strike. As the battle unfolded, Lyra, the Orion defector, stood beside Chen on the bridge. Her four eyes darted across the tactical displays, her alien features set in concentration. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly timbre, "the station is deploying its fighter screen in a Zexaran formation. If we adjust our approach vector by 15 degrees, we can exploit a weakness in their coverage." Chen raised an eyebrow but didn't hesitate. "You heard her. Adjust course, 15 degrees starboard." The maneuver worked perfectly, allowing the human fleet to push closer to the Titan's Forge than they had dared hope. Energy weapons flashed across space, the battle erupting into a dazzling light show against the backdrop of Mars. Back on Earth, in the heart of Project Phoenix, General Stryker watched the battle unfold on a massive holographic display. His fists clenched as he saw the human fleet taking heavy fire. "It's time," he growled. "Launch the hybrids." Across the Earth's surface, sleek fighters rose into the sky. These were the pride of Project Phoenix, human Orion hybrid craft, melding the best of both technologies. They streaked towards Mars, their advanced propulsion systems, allowing them to join the battle in record time. As the hybrid fighters entered the fray, the tide began to turn. Their unique capabilities caught the Titan's Forge's defenses off guard, allowing them to penetrate deeper into the station's defensive perimeter. In orbit around Earth, Dr. Harper and her team worked frantically, analyzing the flood of data from the battle. Suddenly, one of her assistants called out, "Doctor, I think we found something." Harper rushed over, her eyes widening as she saw the data. "My God," she breathed. "There's a fluctuation in their shield grid. It's subtle, but if we can exploit it..." She immediately relayed the information to Admiral Chen and Captain Taylor. Taylor, still locked in his virtual battle with the station's AI, seized on this new information. With a surge of mental effort, he managed to create a small breach in the shield grid. "Admiral," Taylor's strained voice came over the comm. "I've opened a gap in their shields. It's small, but it should be enough for the stealth ships." Chen didn't waste a moment. "Stealth group, this is your window. Get in there." The stealth ships slipped through the gap in the Titan's Forge's defenses, their boarding parties ready for action. Among them was Colonel Jack Hawkins, a seasoned Black Knight commander. As his ship docked with the massive station, Hawkins turned to his team. "Remember your training," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We're here to take control of this station. Failure is not an option." As Hawkins and his team began their infiltration, the battle outside intensified. The human Orion hybrid fighters led daring attack runs, their advanced technology allowing them to dance through the Titan's Forge's defenses. Inside the station, Hawkins and his team fought their way through squads of Orion defenders. The close-quarters combat was intense, with energy weapons and conventional firearms creating a cacophony of destruction. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Grand Admiral Zexara, the Orion commander of the Titan's Forge, had made a fateful decision. The station's ultimate defense mechanism, a massive gravitational weapon, began to power up. As the energy reading spiked, Admiral Chen's face paled. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. That weapon could tear us apart." The human fleet scattered, trying to present a more difficult target. But time was running out. Everything now depended on Hawkins and his team reaching the main control center. Guided by Taylor's voice in their ears, Hawkins led his team deeper into the heart of the Titan's Forge. They faced increasingly fierce resistance, the Orions well aware of the stakes of this battle. As they approached the main control center, Hawkins could feel the vibrations of the powering gravitational weapon through the floor. They were almost out of time. With a final push, Hawkins's team breached the control center. They found themselves face to face with Grand Admiral Zexara's personal guard, the elite of the Orion military. As energy bolts filled the air, Hawkins caught sight of the gravitational weapons controls. He also saw Grand Admiral Zexara himself, the Orion leader, barking orders to his troops. In that split second, Hawkins had to make a choice: disable the weapon and save the fleet, or capture Zexara and potentially gain crucial intelligence about the incoming Orion reinforcements. Time seemed to slow as Hawkins raised his weapon, the fate of Earth hanging on his decision. With split-second clarity, he made his choice. "Johnson, take half the team and disable that weapon," Hawkins barked. "The rest of you, with me. We're going after Zexara." The team split instantly, each group moving with practiced precision. Johnson led his squad towards the pulsing core of the gravitational weapon, while Hawkins charged towards the Orion Grand Admiral. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as Hawkins and his team pushed forward. The acrid smell of ozone filled their nostrils, mixed with the metallic tang of alien alloys. They dove behind consoles and support pillars, returning fire with a combination of human and reverse-engineered Orion weapons. Across the room, Johnson's team encountered fierce resistance. Orion security forces poured in from adjacent corridors, their alien battle cries echoing off the station's walls. The humans fought tooth and nail, their armor scorched and dented from near misses. "Sir, we're taking heavy fire," Johnson's voice crackled over the comm. "But we're pushing through. We'll get that weapon offline." Hawkins acknowledged with a grunt, his focus locked on the towering figure of Grand Admiral Zexara. The Orion commander's four eyes blazed with fury as he barked orders to his troops in their guttural language. Suddenly, Zexara's demeanor changed. His eyes widened and he lunged for a nearby console. Hawkins felt a chill run down his spine as he realized what was happening. "He's trying to activate the self-destruct," Hawkins shouted. "Stop him!" But before anyone could react, Zexara's fingers froze inches from the console. The Orion's face contorted in confusion and rage. Captain Taylor's strained voice came over the comm. "I've got it, Colonel. Self-destruct sequence blocked. But I can't hold it for long." Seizing the moment of confusion, Hawkins and his team surged forward. They engaged Zexara's personal guard in close-quarters combat, a brutal dance of fists, knives, and short-range energy weapons. Outside the Titan's Forge, Admiral Chen's fleet pressed its advantage. The human-Orion hybrid fighters weaved through the station's defenses, their unorthodox maneuvers catching the Orion gunners off guard. Explosions blossomed across the station's surface as more of its external defenses fell. Back in the control center, Johnson's team finally reached the gravitational weapons power core. They worked frantically, applying their hard-won knowledge of Orion technology to overload the system. "It's done!" Johnson shouted over the din of battle. "Core's going critical. This whole section's gonna blow." As if on cue, the station shuddered, alarms blared, and emergency lights bathed the control center in an eerie red glow. Hawkins used the distraction to close in on Zexara, tackling the Orion commander to the ground. The two grappled fiercely, Zexara's alien strength nearly overwhelming Hawkins. But the colonel's years of hand-to-hand combat training paid off. With a series of swift, brutal strikes, he subdued the Orion leader. "Grand Admiral Zexara," Hawkins panted, securing restraints around the alien's limbs. "You are now a prisoner of Earth." As the last pockets of resistance in the control center fell, a new voice cut through the chaos. It was Lyra, the Orion defector, broadcasting from Admiral Chen's flagship. "Attention, crew of the Titan's Forge!" Her voice rang out in flawless Orion. "I am Lyra of the anti-expansionist faction. The human forces have disabled your primary weapon and captured your leader. Further resistance is futile and will only lead to more bloodshed. We call for an immediate cessation of hostilities." Her words sent ripples of confusion through the remaining Orion defenders. Some lowered their weapons, while others looked to their comrades in uncertainty. Hawkins seized the moment. "This is Colonel Hawkins of Earth's forces. Your station is under our control. Lay down your arms and you will be treated fairly under the laws of war." With their leader captured and their superweapon neutralized, the fight drained out of the Orion forces. Weapons clattered to the floor as alien hands raised in surrender. Captain Taylor's voice came over the comm once more, stronger this time. "Colonel, I've got full control of the station's systems, initiating lockdown protocols now." Blast doors slammed shut throughout the Titan's forge, securing critical areas and isolating pockets of potential resistance. The massive station, once the pride of the Orion fleet, now belonged to humanity. Admiral Chen's voice filled the control center. "Excellent work, Colonel. We're moving in to secure the station. Hold your position." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Hawkins took stock of their surroundings. The control center was a mess of broken equipment and scorch marks, with the unconscious forms of Orion defenders scattered about. His team, bruised and battered but alive, secured the perimeter and tended to their wounded. Grand Admiral Zexara glared at Hawkins from where he sat, bound and under guard. The Orion's alien features were unreadable, but the intensity of his gaze spoke volumes. "You have no idea what you've done," Zexara growled in accented English. "This is but the first wave. The full might of the Orion Empire will descend upon your world, and there will be nothing left but ashes." Hawkins met the alien's gaze steadily. "We'll be ready," he replied simply. As Earth forces began to pour into the captured station, Hawkins couldn't shake the feeling that this victory, as monumental as it was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. Hawkins knew that capturing the Titan's forge was just the opening salvo in a war that would decide the fate of humanity. As Earth forces secured the massive station, Admiral Marcus Chen's voice echoed through the comms. "All units, this is Admiral Chen. The Titan's forge is now under our control. I'm designating it as our new command center for Earth's defense operations. Let's move quickly, people. We don't have much time." The control center burst into a flurry of activity. Hawkins watched as human technicians swarmed over Orion consoles, their fingers flying across alien interfaces as they worked to integrate the two technologies. Captain Stephen Taylor, still connected to the station's systems through his neural interface, became the linchpin of this integration process. "It's like, I can see the code," Taylor muttered, his eyes unfocused as he processed vast amounts of data. "I can translate it, adapt it. We can make this work." Under Taylor's guidance, engineers began the complex task of merging human and Orion systems. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing schematics of hybrid ships that seemed to shimmer between two distinct designs. Hawkins approached Admiral Chen, who was studying a tactical display of the solar system. "Sir, what's our next move?" Chen's eyes never left the display. "We're repositioning the Titan's forge to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It'll give us cover and a natural defense line, but that's just the start." As if on cue, General William Stryker's face appeared on a nearby screen. "Chen, I've initiated Operation Phoenix Rising. We're converting every major industrial center on Earth into a production facility for advanced weaponry and shields. If those Orion bastards want our planet, they'll have to go through a hell of a lot to get it." Chen nodded grimly. "Good. We'll need every advantage we can get." Suddenly, Dr. Evelyn Harper burst into the control center, her eyes wide with excitement. "Admiral, we've made a breakthrough. Working with Lyra and the xenobiology team, we've found a way to enhance the electromagnetic weapon. It's more potent now, and the effects last longer." "Excellent work, Doctor," Chen replied. "Get that information to our weapons teams immediately." As Harper hurried off, Hawkins felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see one of his security officers. "Sir, there's a situation with some of the Orion prisoners. They're asking to speak with you." Hawkins frowned, following the officer to a makeshift holding area. To his surprise, he found a group of Orion soldiers standing at attention, their posture respectful rather than hostile. One of them stepped forward. "Colonel Hawkins, we wish to defect. Many of us disagree with the Empire's expansionist policies. We want to help." Hawkins studied them carefully, years of experience telling him their sincerity was genuine. "I'll need to run this by command, but if you're serious, we could use your knowledge." As Hawkins relayed this development to Admiral Chen, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this war could bring about change not just for humanity, but for the Orions as well. Hours passed in a blur of activity. The Titan's forge hummed with energy as its systems were reconfigured, adapted, and enhanced. Outside, the newly produced human-Orion hybrid vessels took up defensive positions, their sleek designs a testament to the rapid advancements made possible by the captured technology. Captain Taylor's voice suddenly cut through the controlled chaos. "Admiral, I've found something in the station's systems. There are hidden protocols. I think we can reconfigure the entire structure, turn it into a massive weapon." Chen's eyes widened. "Can you do it?" Taylor nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's complex, and it'll take a lot of power. But yes, we can do it." As the final preparations were made, long-range sensors lit up. Admiral Chen's voice rang out, steady and clear. "All hands. Battle stations. The Orion reinforcements have arrived at the edge of our solar system. This is it, people. Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment. Let's show them what humanity is made of." The tension in the control center was palpable as everyone took their positions. Hawkins gripped his weapon, ready for whatever came next. As the first wave of Orion ships appeared on their screens, he knew that the true test of humanity's determination was about to begin. The massive screens in the control center lit up with countless red dots, each representing an Orion warship. The sheer number was staggering, dwarfing even the most pessimistic predictions. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the tense silence. "Initiate Operation Asteroid Gauntlet. All ships, take your positions." As the Orion fleet approached, Earth's defense forces sprang into action. The Titan's forge, now positioned strategically within the asteroid belt, became a hive of activity. Captain Taylor, his face pale and drawn from the neural interface, began the complex process of reconfiguring the station. "Beginning transformation sequence," Taylor announced, his voice strained. "Power levels are fluctuating, but holding." Hawkins watched in awe as the station's outer layers began to shift and realign. Massive weapon arrays emerged from hidden compartments, their energy signatures pulsing with deadly potential. "Colonel Hawkins," Admiral Chen called, "your team is up. You know the objective." Hawkins nodded grimly, gathering his strike team. As they prepared to board their stealth shuttle, he briefed them one last time. "Remember, we're going after their superweapon. Expect heavy resistance. Lyra, you're our expert on Orion ship layouts. Lead the way once we're aboard." The Orion defector nodded, her alien features set with purpose. As Hawkins and his team launched towards the Orion flagship, the first wave of Earth's defenses engaged the alien armada. A swarm of unmanned drones, their designs a fusion of human and Orion technology, streaked towards the enemy vanguard. From his neural interface, Captain Taylor directed the drone swarm with inhuman precision. The small, agile craft weaved through the Orion formation, their weapons finding weak points in the alien ship's defenses. "Drone attack successful," Taylor reported, his voice distant and strained. "Orion Vanguard is in disarray." Admiral Chen nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Excellent. Spring the trap." As the main body of the Orion fleet pushed into the asteroid belt, they encountered a deadly gauntlet of hidden defenses. Automated platforms, concealed within hollowed-out asteroids, opened fire. Minefields detonated, their explosions rippling through the tightly packed Orion ships. Earth's hybrid vessels, piloted by the most skilled human crews, launched lightning-fast attacks. They struck from multiple vectors, exploiting gaps in the Orion formation, before disappearing back into the cover of the asteroid field. Aboard the Orion flagship, Hawkins and his team fought their way through alien corridors. The ship's internal gravity shifted wildly as it maneuvered through the asteroid field, making every step a challenge. "We're approaching the weapon control center," Lyra reported, consulting a holographic map. Heavy resistance ahead. Hawkins signaled his team to take cover as a squad of Orion warriors rounded the corner. Energy weapons flared, filling the corridor with deadly light. Back on Earth, Dr. Evelyn Harper monitored the battle from a secure bunker. "The Orion fleet is entering the optimal zone," she reported. "Electromagnetic weapon is charged and ready." General Stryker, overseeing Earth's ground defenses, gave the order. "Fire at will, Doctor." A massive pulse of energy erupted from emitters hidden throughout the asteroid belt. It washed over a significant portion of the Orion fleet, overloading systems and leaving ships drifting powerless. Despite these successes, the sheer size of the Orion fleet began to tell. Their ships pushed through the asteroid belt, their advance slowed but not stopped. "Our defense line is buckling," Chen announced, his voice tight. "Captain Taylor, is the forge ready?" Taylor's response was barely audible, his consciousness stretched to its limits. "Transformation complete. Weapons online." Chen's next order would change the course of the battle. "Engage propulsion. Take us into the heart of their fleet." The Titan's forge, now resembling a massive mechanical predator, surged forward. Its newly revealed weapons opened fire at point-blank range, tearing through Orion ships with devastating effect. As the transformed station plowed into the enemy formation, long-range sensors detected a new anomaly. A massive energy signature, far larger than even the Orion reinforcement fleet, began to materialize at the edge of the solar system. "Unknown contact detected," a sensor operator called out. "Sir, it's huge." Chen's eyes narrowed as he studied the new threat. "Whatever it is, we deal with it after we handle this fleet. All ships, press the attack. We end this here and now." As the battle raged on, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, the mysterious new arrival added an element of uncertainty to an already chaotic conflict. The Titan's Forge, humanity's mobile fortress of unprecedented power, stood as the last line of defense against the Orion onslaught. Aboard the Orion flagship, Hawkins and his team finally breached the weapon control center. As they engaged in fierce close-quarters combat with the alien crew, the outcome of their mission, and possibly the entire war, hung in the balance. Balance hung in the balance. Hawkins ducked as an energy blast seared the air above his head, singeing his hair. He returned fire, his hybrid weapon spitting a burst of superheated plasma that dropped 2 Orion guards. "Lyra, status on the weapon controls?" Hawkins shouted over the din of battle. The Orion defector's fingers flew across the alien console. "Almost there, Colonel. Just need to bypass the final—" A deafening explosion rocked the ship, throwing everyone off balance. Alarms blared as emergency lighting bathed the control center in an eerie red glow. "What the hell was that?" one of Hawkins's team members yelled. Before anyone could respond, a massive energy signature flared to life on their tactical displays. Hawkins' eyes widened as he took in the readout. "It's impossible." Back on the Titan's Forge, Admiral Chen stared in disbelief at the main view screen. The unknown contact that had appeared at the edge of the solar system was now fully materialized, a colossal fleet of ships unlike anything they'd ever seen before. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, to both our forces and the Orions." Chen nodded grimly. "Put it through." A holographic image flickered to life in the center of the command deck. It showed a towering reptilian alien with iridescent scales and piercing yellow eyes. When it spoke, its voice resonated with authority and power. "Attention, combatants. I am Supreme Commander Zorn of the Galactic Confederation. We have long observed the Orion Empire's expansionist policies with growing concern. Now, we choose to intervene." The alien's gaze seemed to penetrate through the screen, locking onto Chen. "Humans of Earth, your tenacity and innovative tactics in the face of overwhelming odds have impressed us. We offer our assistance in repelling the Orion invasion." As Zorn's message concluded, an uneasy silence fell over the command deck. Chen's mind raced, analyzing the potential implications of this unexpected development. "Sir?" Captain Taylor's weak voice broke through the silence. "What are your orders?" Chen turned to see Taylor slumped in his chair, face pale and drawn from the prolonged neural interface connection. He made a quick decision. Maintain our defensive posture, but do not engage the new arrivals. Taylor, disengage from the system. That's an order. We need you functional. As Taylor was disconnected from the Forge's systems, Chen opened a secure channel to Earth's unified government. This is Admiral Chen. We have a new situation that requires immediate attention. While Chen coordinated Earth's response to the Confederation's arrival, Colonel Hawkins and his team used the momentary confusion to press deeper into the Orion flagship. They fought their way through twisting corridors, their hybrid tactics catching the alien defenders off guard. The weapon core should be just ahead, Lyra informed them as they approached a massive set of armored doors. Hawkins nodded, signaling his team to take up positions. Breach and clear. Remember, we need to disable it, not destroy it. We can't risk a chain reaction that could take out half the solar system. As they prepared to breach, the ship's internal gravity suddenly shifted, nearly throwing them off their feet. The Orion vessel was clearly maneuvering, responding to the new threat posed by the Confederation fleet. "Colonel," one of his team called out, "you need to see this." Hawkins glanced at the tactical display on his wrist computer. The Orion fleet was in disarray, with several ships breaking formation and turning their weapons on their own allies. "It's a mutiny," Lyra breathed, her alien features showing a mix of shock and hope. "They're turning against the Empire." Before Hawkins could respond, the armored doors before them began to open. They raised their weapons, ready for a fight, only to find themselves face-to-face with a squad of Orion soldiers in advanced power armor. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, to Hawkins's surprise, the lead Orion soldier lowered his weapon and spoke in halting English. "We join you. Empire must fall." Hawkins exchanged a quick glance with Lyra, who nodded almost imperceptibly. He made a split-second decision and lowered his own weapon. "All right," he said cautiously. "Let's disable this superweapon together." As this unlikely alliance began working to neutralize the Orion's planet-destroying capability, events continued to unfold rapidly across the solar system. On Earth, General Stryker received urgent reports from his command bunker. "Sir, we're detecting massive power fluctuations across the global grid. The planetary defense railguns are drawing more energy than anticipated." Stryker's face hardened. "We don't have a choice. Keep them online and ready to fire. If this new alien fleet turns hostile, we'll need every advantage we can get." Meanwhile, aboard the Confederation flagship, Supreme Commander Zorn prepared for the diplomatic meeting that could decide the fate of the war. His aides briefed him on the latest intelligence about both human and Orion military capabilities. "The humans have shown remarkable adaptability," one aide noted. "Their hybrid technologies are advancing at an unprecedented rate." Zorn nodded thoughtfully. "And the Orions? Internal strife is spreading through their fleet, Supreme Commander. Our intervention seems to have sparked a long-simmering rebellion." As Zorn contemplated this information, a junior officer rushed in, their scales flushed with agitation. "Supreme Commander, urgent news! Our long-range sensors have detected another Orion fleet approaching from the outer system. It's the Emperor's personal armada." Zorn's yellow eyes narrowed. The already complex situation had just become even more precarious. He turned to his communications officer. "Inform the human Admiral Chen and the Orion fleet commander. The negotiations must begin immediately. We may have less time than we thought." As preparations for the diplomatic summit accelerated, the various factions scrambled to position themselves for the coming confrontation. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance, with multiple crises converging toward a single explosive moment. Colonel Hawkins, working alongside his former enemies to disable the superweapon, felt the Orion flagship shudder beneath his feet. He knew that whatever happened next would change the course of history forever. But for now, he focused on the task at hand, determined to eliminate the threat to his homeworld once and for all. His focus narrowed to the immediate task, neutralizing the Orion superweapon. As Hawkins and his unlikely allies worked to disable the planet-destroying device, Admiral Marcus Chen made a decision that would alter the course of the conflict. He turned to his command staff, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. Prepare a shuttle. I'm going to meet with Supreme Commander Zorn personally. Captain Taylor, still recovering from his neural interface disconnect, looked up in alarm. Sir, is that wise? We can't risk losing you. Chen's expression was resolute. This war won't be won by firepower alone. We need to seize this diplomatic opportunity. Within minutes, Chen had assembled a small team for the mission. Dr. Evelyn Harper, her lab coat exchanged for a formal uniform, joined him along with Lyra, the Orion defector whose insights would be invaluable. As they boarded the shuttle, Chen turned to Captain Taylor. Stephen, I need you to temporarily disconnect from the Forge's neural interface. You're pushing yourself too hard. Taylor nodded reluctantly, knowing the Admiral was right. As the shuttle departed, Taylor felt the familiar presence of the Titan's Forge fade from his mind, leaving him feeling oddly hollow. On the Orion flagship, Colonel Hawkins and his team found themselves in an increasingly precarious situation. The ship's internal defenses were adapting to their tactics, and they were running out of options. We need a diversion, Hawkins growled, his mind racing. He turned to the Orion soldier who had joined their cause. Your power systems, how vulnerable are they to overload? The alien's eyes widened in understanding. Very. If we could access main engineering. Hawkins nodded, a plan forming. All right, we split up. Half of you with me, we're going after that superweapon. The rest head for engineering and cause some chaos. As Hawkins's team dispersed, events on Earth were reaching a critical point. General William Stryker stood in the command bunker, surrounded by holographic displays showing the planet's defenses. Bring the railguns to full charge, Stryker ordered, his voice tight. And get those civilian reserves into position. If those aliens make it past our orbital defenses, we'll need every hand we can get. Across the globe, newly trained civilians moved into defensive positions, their faces a mix of purpose and fear as they prepared for a potential ground invasion. Meanwhile, Admiral Chen's shuttle approached the massive Confederation flagship. As they docked, Chen steeled himself for what might be the most important meeting of his life. The diplomatic party was escorted to a vast chamber where Supreme Commander Zorn awaited them. The towering alien's presence was imposing, but Chen refused to be intimidated. Admiral Chen, Zorn rumbled, welcome aboard. I trust you understand the gravity of our situation. Before Chen could respond, another group entered the chamber. Orion officials, led by a stern-faced officer who introduced himself as Sub-Commander Krell. As the negotiations began, tensions were high. Krell's demeanor was outwardly aggressive, but Chen noticed subtle cues in the Orion's body language that suggested internal conflict. Back on the Titan's Forge, the absence of Captain Taylor's neural connection was causing unforeseen complications. The hybrid crew struggled to maintain the station's advanced systems manually, their training pushed to the limit. Reroute power to the main weapons array, shouted Lieutenant Rodriguez, her hands flying over multiple control panels. And someone get those shield harmonics stabilized. The crew worked frantically, acutely aware that their actions could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. On the Orion flagship, Hawkins and his team finally reached the superweapons control center. They found themselves facing a heavily fortified position, Orion guards swarming like angry insects. This is it, Hawkins said, checking his weapon. No matter what happens, that weapon goes offline. Clear? His team nodded grimly. With a deep breath, Hawkins gave the signal to attack. As the assault began, the other half of Hawkins's team reached the ship's engineering section. They worked quickly, using their combined knowledge to overload the power systems. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lights flickered, and gravity fluctuated wildly. The diversion was working. In the midst of the chaos, long-range sensors detected a new threat. The Orion Emperor's personal fleet had arrived at the edge of the solar system, a massive armada that dwarfed even the initial invasion force. Supreme Commander Zorn received the news during the negotiations. His yellow eyes narrowed as he activated a holographic display. It seems the Orion Emperor has decided to join us, Zorn announced, and he appears displeased. The hologram showed the Emperor's fleet advancing rapidly, ignoring all attempts at communication. Zorn turned to face the assembled delegates. It appears we have run out of time for extended diplomacy. With a gesture, Zorn activated another display. Suddenly, a network of previously hidden defense platforms shimmered into view throughout the solar system. A precaution we had hoped not to use, Zorn explained, as energy barriers sprang to life, temporarily halting the Emperor's advance. As the delegates grappled with this new development, Dr. Harper noticed something alarming on one of the sensor readouts. She quickly pulled Admiral Chen aside. "Sir, we have another problem," she said urgently. "The sun, its magnetic field is destabilizing. All this advanced technology, the weapons, the FTL drives, they're having an unforeseen effect. If we don't do something soon, we could be looking at a solar flare that would make this war irrelevant." Chen's mind raced as he processed this new threat. The fate of Earth now hinged not just on military might or diplomatic skill, but on finding a solution to an impending stellar catastrophe. As alarms blared and the ship shuddered from the ongoing battle, Chen realized that the next few moments would determine not just the outcome of the war, but potentially the survival of the entire solar system. Chen's mind raced as he processed the gravity of the situation. Earth faced not just one, but two existential threats: the Orion Emperor's approaching armada and a potentially catastrophic solar event. He turned to Supreme Commander Zorn and Sub-Commander Krell, his expression resolute. "Gentlemen, we face a crisis that threatens us all. I propose an immediate alliance between our forces to confront these dual threats." Krell's eyes narrowed, his mandibles clicking in what Chen had come to recognize as a sign of deep consideration. After a moment, the Orion sub-commander straightened, his voice carrying across the chamber. "I support this alliance," Krell declared, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. "The Emperor's actions no longer serve the best interests of our people or this galaxy." A murmur rippled through the Orion contingent. Chen watched as, one by one, the delegates began to nod in agreement. Zorn observed the proceedings with his alien features set in an inscrutable expression. "You propose a bold strategy, Admiral Chen," Zorn rumbled. "But I concur. The stability of this sector takes precedence over old animosities." As the alliance took shape, events continued to unfold rapidly across the solar system. On the Orion flagship, Colonel Hawkins and his team pushed through the final corridor leading to the Super Weapons Control Center. The ship shuddered around them, alarms blaring as their diversion in engineering continued to wreak havoc. "Stack up," Hawkins ordered as they reached the sealed entrance to the control room. "Breach on my mark." The team moved with practiced efficiency, placing charges on the door's weak points. Hawkins held up 3 fingers, counting down silently. As his last finger dropped, the charges detonated with a thunderous roar. They surged through the opening, weapons at the ready. The room beyond erupted into chaos as the remaining Orion loyalists opened fire. Hawkins rolled behind a console, the acrid smell of ozone filling his nostrils as energy bolts sizzled past. "Suppress and advance," he shouted, popping up to unleash a burst of covering fire. His team responded instantly, laying down a withering barrage that forced the Orion defenders to hunker down. Hawkins seized the moment, vaulting over his cover and closing the distance to the nearest enemy position. In a fluid motion, he disarmed the Orion soldier and used the alien's own weapon to neutralize 2 more defenders. The rest of his team pushed forward, and within moments the resistance crumbled. Hawkins approached the central control panel, its alien interface glowing with an ominous red light. "Let's shut this thing down for good," he growled. Back on Earth, General Stryker received a priority transmission from Admiral Chen. As he absorbed the details of the newly formed alliance, Stryker's weathered face set into grim lines of tenacity. "Reconfigure all targeting systems," he ordered his staff. "I want our defenses able to differentiate between Allied and enemy Orion ships immediately." As his command staff scrambled to comply, Stryker turned his attention to the massive railguns that dotted the planet's surface. "Bring them to full readiness. We may need to provide support fire for our new allies." In orbit, the Titan's forge hummed with activity as Captain Taylor resumed his position at the neural interface. The familiar rush of data flooded his mind as he connected with the station's systems. "Status report," Taylor called out, his voice steady despite the strain of the interface. Lieutenant Rodriguez responded crisply, "Weapons systems at 95% capacity, sir. Shield harmonics stable and holding." Taylor nodded, feeling the station's immense power coursing through him. "Move us into position. We need to be ready when the Emperor's fleet arrives." As the Allied fleets began to organize their defense, Dr. Harper worked feverishly with a mixed team of human and alien scientists. They pored over data streams and complex simulations, racing to finalize their plan to stabilize the sun's magnetic field. "We'll need to modify these Orion energy projectors," Harper explained, gesturing to a holographic schematic. "If we can create a network around the sun, we should be able to contain the flare." An Orion scientist clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Our ships can begin deployment immediately. We'll need precise coordination to establish the field in time." As the preparations continued, long-range sensors lit up with urgent warnings. The first wave of the Orion Emperor's fleet had breached the outer energy barriers, their massive ships pushing relentlessly towards Earth. Admiral Chen, now back aboard the Titan's forge, stared at the tactical display with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The sheer size of the approaching armada was staggering. "It's time," Chen said, his voice carrying across the command deck. "Initiate Operation Black Knight Rising." Across the solar system, hidden launch bays sprang to life. Sleek hybrid fighters streaked into space, their pilots a mix of Earth's finest and Orion defectors. These Black Knights formed up into attack squadrons, their advanced systems allowing them to close rapidly on the Emperor's fleet. As the Black Knights engaged the outer elements of the enemy force, causing confusion and disrupting their formation, Chen turned to Captain Taylor. "Stephen, move us into firing position. We need to be ready to strike as soon as they're in range." Taylor nodded, feeling the massive station begin to shift beneath him. Through the neural interface, he could sense the weapons charging, the colossal energies building as the Titan's forge prepared for battle. The Allied fleet spread out behind the station, a mix of Earth, Confederation, and Rebel Orion ships forming a united front against the approaching armada. As the distance closed, tension mounted across every ship and station. Chen's voice cut through the nervous silence on the command deck. "All forces, stand ready. We face not just the Emperor's fleet, but a threat to our very sun. We fight not just for Earth, but for the future of this entire system." As if in response to his words, the first tendrils of the massive solar flare began to emerge from the sun's surface. The battle for Earth's survival was about to begin on two fronts, with the fate of billions hanging in the balance. Balance. The massive solar flare loomed on the horizon, a fiery apocalypse waiting to be unleashed. But humanity and its newfound allies weren't about to go down without a fight. As the Emperor's fleet bore down on them, a streak of light cut across the void. Then another, and another. Suddenly, space itself seemed to ignite as hundreds of sleek fighters emerged from hidden launch bays, scattered throughout the solar system. "Black Knights, engage!" Commander Jake Hawkins' voice crackled over the comms. His fighter, a seamless blend of human and Orion technology, led the charge. The Black Knights dove into the fray, their unprecedented maneuvers catching the Orion Emperor's forces completely off guard. Jake barrel-rolled his craft, dodging enemy fire with preternatural skill before unleashing a barrage of energy bolts that shredded an Orion frigate's shields. "All wings, form up on me," Jake ordered. "Execute pattern Omega-3. The Black Knights moved as one, weaving an intricate dance of destruction through the enemy formation. Orion ships, caught in the chaos, turned their weapons on each other in desperate attempts to hit the elusive fighters. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold from the Titan's forge, his eyes darting between tactical displays. "Exploit those gaps," he commanded. "Wedge formation, all available ships. Push through their lines." The Allied fleet surged forward, ships of various designs and origins moving in perfect harmony. Galactic Confederation cruisers provided covering fire as Earth destroyers and Orion rebel ships pierced the Emperor's formation. The Titan's forge itself began to advance, its massive frame belying in surprising agility. Energy built up along its hull, crackling with barely held back power. Main cannon charge, Captain Taylor reported through the neural interface. Targeting solution locked. Chen nodded grimly. Fire! A lance of pure energy erupted from the Titan's forge, so bright it momentarily outshone the sun. It carved through space, vaporizing several Orion capital ships in its path before detonating against the shields of a massive dreadnought. The explosion rippled through the enemy fleet, scattering smaller vessels like leaves in a storm. Aboard the Orion flagship, alarms blared as systems failed cascaded. Colonel Jack Hawkins and his team fought their way through collapsing corridors, the ship coming apart around them. This way, Hawkins shouted, gesturing towards a hangar bay. They sprinted past panicking Orion crew members, dodging falling debris. They reached the hangar just as a violent tremor shook the ship. Hawkins leapt into the pilot's seat of an Orion shuttle, his fingers flying over the alien controls. "Strap in!" he yelled to his team as the engines roared to life. The shuttle blasted out of the disintegrating flagship, narrowly avoiding a gout of plasma from a ruptured power conduit. Moments later, the Orion flagship exploded in a massive fireball. The shock wave buffeted Hawkins's stolen shuttle, nearly sending it into a tailspin. He wrestled with the controls, stabilizing their flight path just in time to see the devastation left in the flagship's wake. The destruction sent ripples of confusion through the Orion fleet. Ships veered off course, formations broke down, and for a critical moment, their assault faltered. On Earth, General Stryker seized the opportunity. "All batteries, commence firing," he ordered. The planet's surface erupted with activity as massive railguns elevated toward the sky. There was a moment of eerie silence, then a thunderous roar as hypersonic projectiles streaked into space. The barrage struck the Emperor's rearguard with devastating precision. Orion support ships, caught off guard by the planetary assault, crumpled under the onslaught. Vital supply lines were severed, and the enemy's ability to reinforce their front lines vanished in a series of spectacular explosions. Meanwhile, aboard a Galactic Confederation science vessel, Dr. Evelyn Harper worked frantically to stabilize the solar shield. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she manipulated complex energy fields, trying to counter the building pressure of the impending flare. "Recalibrate the third projector array," she instructed an Orion scientist. "We need to strengthen the field's coherence or it'll collapse under the next surge." The ship shuddered as a tendril of solar energy lashed out, partially breaching the shield. Alarms blared, warning of localized disruptions rippling through both Allied and enemy fleets. "We're running out of time," Harper muttered, her fingers flying over holographic controls. Back in the heart of the battle, the Orion Emperor's rage manifested in a new threat. A contingent of elite warships, each rivaling the destroyed flagship in power, broke away from the main fleet. "Emperor's personal guard incoming," Jake Hawkins reported, his Black Knight squadron regrouping after their initial assault. Before Chen could respond, a new voice cut across the comms. "This is Sub-Commander Krell," the Orion rebel declared. "My forces will engage the guard. We know their tactics." Krell's ships, a mix of Orion designs with hastily applied Allied markings, accelerated towards the oncoming elites. The two forces clashed in a furious exchange of energy weapons and missiles. Krell's intimate knowledge of Orion's strategy, allowing him to anticipate and counter the guard's movements. As the dogfight intensified, drawing the Emperor's best forces away from the main battle, Supreme Commander Zorn activated another surprise. Hidden wormhole generators throughout the solar system hummed to life, creating spatial distortions that allowed Allied ships to reposition rapidly. "All ships prepare for tactical jumps," Chen ordered. "Coordinate with Zorn's team for optimal positioning." The Allied fleet began to blink in and out of existence, appearing at critical points across the battlefield. The Orion Emperor's forces, already struggling with the chaos sown by the Black Knights, found themselves constantly outflanked and outmaneuvered. Commander Jake Hawkins, seeing an opportunity, rallied his pilots. "Black Knights, form up," he called out. "We're going after their command and control. Intel from ground teams suggests we target these coordinates." The elite squadrons streaked towards the heart of the enemy fleet, their hybrid fighters weaving through the debris-strewn battlefield. They struck with surgical precision, targeting communication arrays and control nodes identified by Colonel Hawkins's team. As the Black Knights completed their assault, the Orion Emperor's ability to coordinate his vast armada began to crumble. Individual ship captains, cut off from central command, fell back on conflicting protocols and outdated battle plans. The Titan's Forge, pushing deeper into enemy territory, suddenly found itself surrounded by a concentration of Orion warships. Energy weapons and missile barrages converged on the station from all directions. Shields holding at 62%, Taylor reported, his voice strained from the neural interface's feedback. Chen's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. All Allied ships in range, converge on our position, he ordered. We need to break this encirclement now. The space around the Titan's Forge erupted into a maelstrom of weapons fire and explosions as both sides committed fully to this pivotal engagement. The station's massive cannons blazed, while swarms of fighters engaged in desperate close-quarters combat. As the battle raged on, the first major tendrils of the solar flare breached Harper's magnetic shield. Communications across the battlefield became sporadic, and energy weapons on both sides fluctuated wildly. Harper and her team worked with frantic intensity, racing against time to reinforce the shield before the flare reached its peak. The fate of Earth, the Allied forces, and perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance as the conflict reached its fever pitch. As the battle raged on, Commander Jake Hawkins' voice crackled over the comms, persistence evident in his tone. "Black Knights, form up on me. We're going for the Emperor's command ship." The elite squadron of hybrid fighters broke away from the main engagement, their sleek forms streaking across the star-filled void. Jake's fingers danced over his controls, plotting a course through the chaos of battle. "Target their main energy core," he instructed his pilots. "We'll hit them where it hurts." The Black Knights dove into a storm of enemy fire, their advanced craft twisting and weaving through the barrage with preternatural grace. Jake barrel-rolled his fighter, narrowly avoiding a searing beam of energy that would have vaporized a lesser craft. As they closed in on the Emperor's command ship, the intensity of the defensive fire increased exponentially. Jake gritted his teeth, pushing his fighter to its limits. "Almost there," he muttered, more to himself than his squadron. In a coordinated strike, the Black Knights unleashed a salvo of energy torpedoes. The projectiles streaked towards their target, finding gaps in the command ship's defenses. Multiple explosions bloomed across its hull, and for a moment, its shields flickered. "Now," Jake shouted, "full attack run!" The Black Knights surged forward, capitalizing on the momentary weakness. Their weapons found their mark, tearing into the exposed energy core. The Emperor's command ship shuddered, secondary explosions rippling along its length. Meanwhile, Colonel Jack Hawkins, having escaped the destruction of the Orion flagship, maneuvered his stolen shuttle towards a sleek vessel of mixed human and Orion design. The hybrid ship's hangar bay opened, welcoming the colonel and his team aboard. "Transmitting data now," Hawkins said, connecting his portable device to the ship's systems. "Get this to Admiral Chen immediately." The hybrid vessel's captain nodded, initiating a secure transmission to the Titan's Forge. "Admiral Chen, we have critical intelligence from Colonel Hawkins." Aboard the massive station, Chen received the data, his eyes widening as he processed its implications. "This changes everything," he murmured, then raised his voice. "All Allied ships, adjust your weapon frequencies according to the data I'm sending. We've found a way through their shields." The Titan's Forge itself began to hum with increased energy as its main weapons array reconfigured. Chen watched the tactical display, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "Fire main cannons," he ordered. Beams of recalibrated energy lanced out from the Titan's Forge, slicing through the previously impenetrable Orion shields as if they were tissue paper. Enemy ships that had seemed invincible moments before now erupted in flames, their hulls torn apart by the precisely tuned assault. On Earth, General William Stryker's command center suddenly came alive with urgent alerts. "Sir," a young officer called out, "orbital defense satellites are detecting Orion stealth ships attempting to bypass our main forces." Stryker's eyes narrowed. "Activate the planetary defense grid," he commanded. "Let's show them what Earth can do." Across the planet's surface, hidden installations sprang to life. Weapons of Orion design, captured and reverse-engineered, elevated towards the sky. They opened fire in a coordinated barrage, each shot guided by Earth's advanced tracking systems. The stealth ships, caught off guard by weapons they thought beyond human capabilities, suddenly found themselves illuminated against the backdrop of space. Their cloaking devices, useless against the Earth-Orion hybrid technology, failed under the assault. "Break off! Break off!" The panicked cries of Orion captains filled the comm channels as they desperately tried to evade the unexpected counterattack. But it was too late for many of them, their ships reduced to expanding clouds of debris. In the midst of the solar shield, Dr. Evelyn Harper faced a critical decision. The magnetic barrier fluctuated dangerously as the solar flare reached its zenith, threatening to collapse at any moment. "We need more power," she said, her voice tight with tension. "Reroute energy from life support." Her Orion colleague looked at her in shock. "But that could—" "I know the risks," Harper cut him off. "Do it now, or we all die anyway." The ship's hull creaked ominously as power surged into the shield generators. Harper held her breath, watching the energy readings climb. Just as the most intense wave of solar energy crashed against the barrier, the shield stabilized, holding firm against the onslaught. Sub-Commander Krell's voice rang out across the rebel Orion frequencies. "All ships, engage the Emperor's Guard. Show them the true strength of Orion." His fighters swarmed around the elite enemy vessels, using unconventional tactics that caught the Guard off guard. Krell's intimate knowledge of Orion's strategy allowed him to anticipate and counter their every move. As the dogfight intensified, Krell made a bold decision. "Strike team, prepare for boarding action," he ordered, guiding his ship towards a disabled guard vessel. "We're going to capture their officers and gain access to the Emperor's battle plans." The battle continued to rage across the solar system, with the Allied forces pressing their newfound advantage. The Black Knights regrouped, setting their sights on the enemy's logistics ships. Commander Jake Hawkins' voice crackled over the comms once more. "Let's cut off their supply lines. Without resources, those frontline warships won't last long." As the conflict reached a fever pitch, new energy signatures appeared on the edges of the system. Ships of various designs and origins began to arrive, drawn by the massive battle. Some immediately moved to join the Allied forces, while others positioned themselves alongside the Emperor's fleet. Admiral Chen, observing these developments from the Titan's Forge, knew that the next phase of the battle would be crucial. The station shuddered under a renewed assault from Orion heavy cruisers, but Chen remained focused. "Initiate transformation sequence," he ordered. The Titan's Forge began to shift, its massive form reconfiguring into a more combat-oriented configuration. Additional weapon emplacements were revealed, and critical systems were reinforced. As the station completed its metamorphosis, Chen allowed himself a small smile. "Now," he said, his voice carrying across the command deck, "let's show them what this station can really do." The Titan's Forge's transformation had barely completed when alarms blared across the command deck. Admiral Chen's eyes snapped to the tactical display, where a new energy signature flared to life within the heart of the Orion Emperor's personal battleship. "Sir, we're detecting an unprecedented power surge," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Taylor, her voice tense. "It's unlike anything we've seen before." Chen's eyes hardened as he processed the implications. "Patch me through to Supreme Commander Zorn and General Stryker immediately," he ordered. As the comlink established, Chen's worst fears were confirmed. Sub-Commander Krell's face appeared on a secondary screen, his expression grim. "Admiral, we've extracted critical intelligence from the captured Orion officers. The Emperor has activated the Omega Cannon, a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems." The command deck fell silent, the weight of this revelation settling heavily on every shoulder. Chen took a deep breath, his mind racing through potential strategies. "We need a plan, and we need it now," he said, addressing Zorn and Stryker. "This changes everything." While the War Council convened, Commander Jake Hawkins received new orders from Chen. The Black Knights, barely recovered from their previous assault, found themselves thrust back into the fray. "Listen up, Knights," Jake's voice crackled over the squadron's comm channel. We've got a new primary objective. The Emperor's packing some serious heat, a super weapon that could wipe us all out. We need to find it and shut it down. The Black Knight's fighters streaked across space, their hybrid engines pushing to maximum output. Jake's eyes scanned his instruments, searching for any sign of the Omega Cannon's energy signature. "Commander," one of his pilots called out, "I'm picking up unusual radiation patterns from the Emperor's battleship. It could be our target." Jake nodded, his expression set with persistence. "Good work. All units, form up on me. We're going in hot." As the Black Knights approached their target, Sub-Commander Krell's forces engaged the battleship's escort fleet. The space around the massive vessel erupted into chaos, energy weapons and missiles crisscrossing the void. "This is our window," Jake announced. "Activate stealth systems and follow my lead." The Black Knight's fighters seemed to shimmer and fade, their outline blurring against the backdrop of stars. They slipped past the outer defenses, weaving through the debris of destroyed ships and clouds of superheated gas. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Stryker had mobilized a special task force led by Dr. Alan Reeves. The brilliant physicist pored over the data streaming in from the front lines, his team working feverishly to develop a countermeasure. "The energy output is staggering," Reeves muttered, his eyes never leaving the holographic display. "If we can't stop it, Earth won't stand a chance." Dr. Evelyn Harper, fresh from her success with the solar flare crisis, joined Reeves's team. Her expertise in magnetic shielding technology proved invaluable as they raced against time. "What if we adapted the solar shield concept?" Harper suggested, her fingers flying over a touchscreen. "We could create a localized defense system for Earth. Buy us some more time." Reeves nodded, his eyes lighting up with the spark of inspiration. "Yes, and if we combine that with the Galactic Confederation's gravity generators." As the scientists worked, the battle in space intensified. The Titan's forge moved into a defensive position, its massive form interposing itself between Earth and the approaching Orion forces. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display, his expression taut with concentration. "Divert all non-essential power to our shield systems," he ordered. "We need to be ready for anything that cannon throws at us." The Allied fleet formed up around the Titan's forge, creating a wall of ships and firepower. Newly arrived independent alien factions, recognizing the threat posed by the Omega Cannon, joined the defensive line without hesitation. Aboard the Emperor's battleship, Jake Hawkins and his Black Knights had breached the outer hull. They moved swiftly through the corridors, engaging Orion defenders in close-quarters combat. "We're picking up massive energy readings 2 decks below," Jake reported, his voice low and urgent. "That has to be the cannon's control center." As they fought their way deeper into the ship, the Omega Cannon's charging sequence accelerated. The Emperor, sensing his impending defeat, had chosen to gamble everything on this final, devastating attack. "The weapon's becoming unstable," Dr. Reeves's voice crackled over the comms. "If it fires in this state, it could tear a hole in the fabric of space-time itself." Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "All Allied forces, commence full-scale assault on the Emperor's battleship. We need to buy the Black Knights more time." The Titan's forge led the charge, its weapons blazing. Energy beams and projectiles hammered the battleship's shields, creating ripples of distortion across its protective barrier. Inside the vessel, Jake and his team finally reached the entrance to the Omega Cannon's control center. They could feel the thrumming of immense power through the deck plates beneath their feet. "This is it," Jake said, readying his weapon. "Whatever happens, we have to shut this thing down." As the Black Knights prepared to breach the final barrier, the fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The next few moments would determine whether humanity's bold stand against tyranny would end in triumph or annihilation. Annihilation, or a new dawn for galactic civilization. The final barrier gave way with a thunderous crack as Jake and his team breached the control center. They poured into the room, weapons raised, only to be met by a wall of energy fire from entrenched Orion defenders. "Take cover!" Jake shouted, diving behind a console as plasma bolts seared the air around him. The acrid smell of ozone filled his nostrils as he quickly assessed the situation. The control center was a vast chamber, dominated by a pulsing central core. the heart of the Omega cannon. Orion guards stood at strategic points throughout the room, their advanced energy shields glowing as they absorbed incoming fire from the Black Knights. Jake tapped his comm. "Admiral Chen, we've reached the target, but resistance is heavy. We need backup." Chen's voice crackled in response. "Understood, Commander. Reinforcements are inbound, but you need to buy us time. That cannon cannot fire." As if on cue, the core's pulsing increased in tempo, bathing the room in an eerie, oscillating light. Warning klaxons blared, signaling the weapon's imminent activation. "Sergeant Chen," Jake called out to his tech specialist. "Can you shut it down?" Lisa Chen was already furiously working at a nearby terminal, her fingers flying over the alien interface. "I'm trying, sir, but the encryption is like nothing I've seen before. It'll take time." Time they didn't have. Jake gritted his teeth and signaled to his team. "Suppressing fire! We need to clear a path to that core." The Black Knights responded instantly, unleashing a coordinated barrage that forced the Orion defenders to hunker down behind their shields. Jake seized the moment, vaulting over his cover and sprinting towards the central platform. He had barely made it halfway when a massive explosion rocked the ship. Through the viewport, Jake saw the Titan's forge, unleashing a devastating salvo against the battleship's hull. The entire room shuddered, throwing both humans and Orions off balance. Taking advantage of the chaos, Jake pressed forward. He was meters away from the core when a towering figure materialized before him, clad in gleaming battle armor. The Orion Emperor himself stood between Jake and his objective, energy crackling around his augmented form. "You dare challenge me in the heart of my own ship?" The Emperor's voice boomed, amplified by his suit's systems. Jake raised his weapon, but the Emperor moved with inhuman speed. A gauntleted fist struck Jake's chest, sending him flying across the room. He slammed into a wall, the breath knocked from his lungs. As Jake struggled to his feet, he saw his team engaging the Emperor's personal guard in fierce close-quarters combat. The room had devolved into a chaotic melee, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Outside, the space battle raged with renewed intensity. Admiral Chen coordinated the Allied assault from the Titan's forge, its massive weapon arrays carving swaths through the Orion fleet. Sub-Commander Krell's forces pressed their advantage, their unconventional tactics sowing confusion among the Imperial ranks. Back on the battleship, Jake shook off his disorientation and charged back into the fray. He ducked under a swing from an Orion guard, using his momentum to drive his shoulder into the alien's midsection. As his opponent stumbled, Jake brought his weapon up and fired point blank, the hybrid rounds piercing the guard's shield. The Emperor, seeing his forces falter, let out a roar of fury. He activated his suit's weapon systems, energy blades materializing around his arms. With terrifying speed and strength, he began cutting through the Black Knight's ranks. Jake watched in horror as his teammates fell before the Emperor's onslaught. He knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "Sergeant Chen, status on that shutdown." "Almost there, sir," Lisa shouted back, her voice strained. "Just need a few more seconds." Those seconds felt like an eternity as Jake faced off against the Emperor. He dodged and weaved, using every trick in his arsenal to stay alive against the vastly superior opponent. His armor was scorched and dented, his muscles screaming in protest, but he refused to yield. Just as Jake felt his strength failing, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Black Knights, clear the area!" Major Derek Stone and his special operations team burst into the control center, their arrival catching both sides off guard. They carried with them a large cylindrical device, the quantum field generator developed by Dr. Reeves and his team. The Emperor, recognizing the new threat, disengaged from Jake and turned his attention to Stone's team. "You are too late," he snarled, his voice filled with malice. "The Omega cannon will fire, and your world will burn." As if to punctuate his words, the core's pulsing reached a fever pitch. Energy arced between the surrounding consoles, and the entire ship seemed to vibrate with barely suppressed power. Jake, seeing an opportunity, shouted to Stone, "Deploy the device! We'll cover you!" The Black Knights rallied, providing suppressing fire as Stone's team rushed to position the quantum field generator. The Emperor unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, but Jake intercepted him, engaging in a desperate hand-to-hand struggle to buy the other's time. "Device active," Stone called out. The quantum field generator hummed to life, creating a shimmering bubble of energy around the Omega cannon's core. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself held its breath. Then, with a deafening roar, the Omega cannon fired. But instead of lancing out into space, its enormous energy was caught and redirected by the quantum field. The control center became a maelstrom of light and sound as the weapon's power turned in upon itself. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the deck plates buckled under the strain. Jake, still locked in combat with the Emperor, felt the ship lurch beneath him. He knew they had only moments before the entire battleship tore itself apart. "All units, fall back to the extraction point," he ordered, disengaging from the Emperor and sprinting towards the exit. As they ran, Jake couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and trepidation. They had stopped the Omega cannon, but at what cost? And what new challenges awaited them as they fought their way off the doomed battleship? With alarms blaring and the ship coming apart around them, Jake led his team through the chaotic corridors. The battle was just getting started, and the race to escape had only just begun. The corridors of the Emperor's battleship had become a maze of twisted metal and flickering emergency lights as Jake and his team raced towards their extraction point. Explosions rocked the vessel, sending tremors through the deck plates beneath their feet. "This way!" Jake shouted, leading his battered squad around a corner. They barely made it a few steps before a massive energy blast tore through the bulkhead ahead, forcing them to skid to a halt. Through the newly created opening stepped the Orion Emperor, his battlesuit glowing with unleashed power. "Did you think you could escape me so easily, humans?" he snarled, raising his arms as energy crackled around his gauntlets. Jake and his team dove for cover as the Emperor unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each impact leaving scorch marks on the walls and floor. The acrid smell of ozone filled the air as the Black Knights returned fire, their weapons seeming pitifully inadequate against the Emperor's advanced technology. "Sergeant Chen," Jake called out over the din of battle, "can you find us another route?" Lisa Chen, her face streaked with grime and sweat, pulled out a holographic display of the ship's layout. Her eyes darted across the shifting blueprints as she searched for an alternative path. "There's a maintenance tunnel 2 levels down," she shouted back, "but we'll have to get past him first." As if in response to her words, the Emperor charged forward, his energy blades slicing through the air with deadly precision. Jake rolled to avoid a strike that would have cleaved him in two, feeling the heat of the blade as it passed mere centimeters from his face. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, Major Derek Stone and his team were making steady progress towards the Omega cannon's location. They moved swiftly through narrow maintenance tunnels, their path illuminated by the soft glow of emergency lighting. "Contact front," whispered one of Stone's operatives as they approached an intersection. The team pressed themselves against the walls as an Orion repair crew passed by, oblivious to their presence. Once the area was clear, Stone signaled his team to move forward. They emerged into a wider corridor, only to be met by a squad of Orion security forces. Without hesitation, both sides opened fire. The air filled with the sharp crack of gunfire and the hiss of energy weapons. Stone's team took cover behind structural supports, returning fire with practiced precision. The specialized rounds from their weapons punched through the Orion's personal shields, dropping several of the alien soldiers. "Push forward," Stone ordered, leading the charge. They couldn't afford to get bogged down in a prolonged firefight, not with the Omega cannon powering up and time running short. Outside the battleship, the space around Earth had become a dazzling light show of weapons fire and explosions. The Titan's Forge, its massive form dominating the defensive line, unleashed salvo after salvo against the Emperor's forces. On the bridge of the station, Admiral Marcus Chen watched the tactical display with steadfast perseverance. "Status on the gravity generators?" he demanded. A junior officer responded promptly. "Supreme Commander Zorn reports the network is 80% complete, sir. They're facing heavy resistance from the Emperor's escort ships." Chen nodded, his mind racing through potential strategies. "Divert our portside batteries to provide covering fire for Zorn's ships. We need that gravity net operational before the Omega cannon fires." Back in the control center, the battle had reached a fever pitch. Jake and his Black Knights found themselves pinned down behind hastily erected energy barriers, the Emperor's relentless assault keeping them from reaching the main control console. "We need to breach those force fields," Jake shouted to his team. He turned to Lisa Chen, who was furiously working on a portable terminal. "Any luck bypassing the security protocols?" Lisa shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "The Emperor's overrides are too complex. I can't shut them down from here." Jake gritted his teeth, knowing they were running out of options. He tapped his comm, hoping to reach their reinforcements. "Major Stone, what's your status? We're pinned down and need that quantum field generator." Stone's voice came back, punctuated by the sound of nearby explosions. "We're close, Commander, but we've hit heavy resistance, splitting the team to buy time. Stand by." As Stone's voice cut out, Jake saw the Emperor preparing for another devastating attack. The alien tyrant's battlesuit hummed with building energy, the air around him shimmering with heat. "Everyone down!" Jake yelled, throwing himself to the floor just as a massive wave of energy swept over their position. The Black Knight's barriers flickered and failed, leaving them exposed. The Emperor's laughter filled the chamber, a sound of cruel triumph. "Your efforts are futile," he declared. "The Omega cannon will fire, and your world will be reduced to ashes." As if to punctuate his words, the ship shuddered violently. The central core of the Omega cannon pulsed with increasing intensity, bathing the control center in an otherworldly glow. Jake looked around at his battered team, seeing persistence in their eyes despite their dire situation. He knew they couldn't give up, not with Earth's fate hanging in the balance. With renewed tenacity, he began formulating a desperate plan to overcome the Emperor's defenses and reach the cannon's controls. The battle for Earth's survival had reached its most critical moment, and the next few minutes would determine the fate of billions. As Jake prepared to make his move, he could only hope that Stone's team would arrive in time with the quantum field generator, their last best hope for stopping the Omega cannon before it was too late. Late. The ship lurched again, more violently this time, and Jake knew they were out of time. "Last chance," he muttered, steeling himself for what came next. "Black Knights, on me!" With a burst of speed, Jake sprinted towards the Emperor, his team providing covering fire. The Orion Tyrant, caught off guard by the sudden charge, unleashed a torrent of energy blasts that scorched the air around them. Jake weaved through the barrage, closing the distance rapidly. Just as he reached striking range, Lisa's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, catch!" A small, cobbled-together device arced through the air. Jake snatched it mid-stride, recognizing it instantly as a makeshift EMP. Without breaking his momentum, he activated the device and hurled it at the force fields, protecting the main control console. The EMP detonated in a brilliant flash of blue-white light. Arcs of electricity danced across the force fields, which flickered and died. The Emperor roared in fury, realizing his final defense had fallen. Jake didn't waste a second. "Chen, Stone's console. I've got the Emperor." As Lisa sprinted for the exposed controls, Jake engaged the Emperor in close combat. The Orion's energy blades sliced through the air, leaving trails of searing light in their wake. Jake ducked and weaved, his enhanced reflexes pushed to their limit. Across the chamber, Major Stone and his team burst through a side entrance. The quantum field generator held securely between them. They immediately came under fire from hidden weapon emplacements that unfolded from the walls. "Suppressing fire!" Stone bellowed, his team spreading out to engage the new threats. "Get that generator in position." Outside the battleship, the space around Earth had become a maelstrom of light and destruction. Admiral Chen coordinated the assault from the Titan's forge, its massive weapon arrays carving swaths through the Orion fleet. "All ships, concentrate fire on these coordinates," Chen ordered, highlighting a section of the Emperor's flagship. "Create an opening for our fighters." As Allied ships pounded the designated area, sleek Earth fighters slipped through the weakened defenses, targeting key external systems with surgical precision. Back in the control center, Jake found himself locked in a deadly dance with the Emperor. Each swing of those energy blades came closer to ending the fight, and Jake's life. But with every near miss, Jake learned, adapted, and struck back. "Your resistance is futile," the Emperor snarled, his voice distorted by his battlesuit. I am the master of this vessel, of this weapon. Its power flows through me. As if to emphasize his point, the Emperor's suit began to glow with an otherworldly light. Energy crackled along its surface, and Jake felt the hairs on his arms stand on end. "Lisa, status!" Jake shouted, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have taken his head off. "Working on it," Lisa called back, her fingers flying over the alien controls. "The Emperor's overrides are fighting me every step of the way." Across the room, Stone's team had secured a perimeter around the quantum field generator. As they activated the device, a shimmering energy field began to expand outward, slowly enveloping the Omega Cannon's core. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The cannon's pulsing energy signature became erratic, its structural integrity visibly distorting. Alarms blared throughout the ship as systems struggled to compensate. The Emperor staggered, his connection to the weapon sending feedback through his suit. Jake seized the opportunity, landing a solid blow that sent the alien ruler reeling. "It's working," Stone called out, "but we're getting some strange readings. The field is interacting with something outside the ship." Jake didn't have time to process that information. The Emperor had recovered, and his attacks came with renewed ferocity. Energy arced from his suit in wild, unpredictable patterns, scorching the deck and walls. "You think you've won?" the Emperor roared. "I'll destroy this entire system before I let you take my weapon." With a gesture, holographic controls materialized around the Emperor. His fingers danced across the ethereal interface, inputting a series of override codes. The ship shuddered, more violently than before. The Omega Cannon's core flared with blindingly bright energy, its pulsing now a constant, dangerous thrum. "Lisa!" Jake shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "He's trying to trigger an overload," Lisa responded, her own fingers flying across the main console. "I'm locked out of the primary systems." The quantum field continued to expand, but now it seemed to be fighting against the cannon's unleashed power. Arcs of energy lashed out, striking the field and creating cascading ripples of distortion. Stone's team struggled to maintain the generator's stability, making constant adjustments as the energy levels fluctuated wildly. "We can't keep this up forever," Stone warned, his voice barely audible over the rising din. Outside, the Allied fleet detected the surge in energy readings. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "All ships, fall back. Something's happening with the Omega Cannon." As the battle reached its crescendo, Jake found himself face to face with the Emperor, both of them at the heart of the maelstrom. Energy coursed around them, the very air seeming to crackle with power. "It ends here," Jake growled, readying himself for one final assault. The Emperor's eyes glowed with malevolent energy behind his helmet. "Yes," he agreed, raising his weapons. "It does." With Earth's fate hanging in the balance, the two combatants charged at each other, each determined to emerge victorious in this final, cataclysmic clash. Clash. The impact sent shockwaves through the control center, knocking both combatants off balance. Jake stumbled backward, his enhanced reflexes barely keeping him upright. The Emperor, his battlesuit crackling with energy, regained his footing first. Jake's mind raced, searching for a weakness. He glanced at the main control console, an idea forming. With a burst of speed, he lunged towards it, fingers flying across the alien interface. The Emperor's voice boomed. "You dare to challenge my control?" Jake ignored him, inputting a rapid series of commands. The console flickered, resisting his efforts. But years of combat experience and countless hours of training paid off. He found a gap in the Emperor's defenses, exploiting it ruthlessly. The effect was immediate. The Emperor's suit sputtered, its connection to the Omega Cannon disrupted. The alien tyrant staggered, momentarily vulnerable. "Now, Lisa!" Jake shouted. Sergeant Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Commander, I've identified a weak point in his suit. The power distribution node on the lower back." Jake didn't hesitate. He launched himself at the Emperor, targeting the exposed weakness. His fist connected with a satisfying crunch, sending arcs of energy cascading across the suit's surface. The Emperor roared in pain and fury, swinging wildly. Jake ducked under the attack, pressing his advantage. Across the chamber, Major Stone's team faced a crisis of their own. The quantum field generator whined ominously, its casing glowing white-hot. "It's overloading," one of Stone's operatives yelled over the din. Stone assessed the situation in seconds. "We need to move it closer to the core. It's our only shot." His team sprang into action, disconnecting the device from its moorings. As they lifted it, a wave of intense heat washed over them. Their protective gear, advanced as it was, barely shielded them from the generator's raw energy output. Stone led the way, navigating through corridors warped by the cannon's power. Sections of the ship buckled and twisted around them, creating a nightmarish obstacle course. "Watch it!" Stone called out as a support beam crashed down, nearly crushing two of his team members. They pressed on, the generator growing heavier with each step. Stone's arms burned with the effort, but he refused to slow down. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. Back in the control center, the Emperor had recovered from Jake's assault. His battlesuit hummed back to life, reconnecting to the Omega cannon systems. "Enough of this!" the Emperor snarled. He input a series of commands, his fingers a blur across the holographic interfaces. The ship lurched violently. Alarms blared, their urgent wailing echoing through every corridor. Lisa's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, he's activated some kind of hidden protocol. The cannon's energy levels are spiking off the charts." Jake felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet. He could sense the massive buildup of power, like a storm about to break. "Stone, status on that generator?" Jake barked into his comm. Stone's reply came back, punctuated by heavy breathing. "Almost there. Commander, entering the core chamber now." Jake knew they were running out of time. He charged at the Emperor once more, determined to keep him distracted from the controls. Outside the battleship, Admiral Chen watched in horror as the Emperor's flagship began to tear itself apart. Massive sections of hull plating peeled away, exposing the ship's internal structures. "All ships, fall back," Chen ordered. "Prepare for potential energy discharge." The Titan's forge moved into position, its massive energy shields flaring to life. Chen could only hope it would be enough to protect Earth if the worst happened. In the Omega cannon's core chamber, Stone's team arrived just as another violent tremor shook the ship. They positioned the quantum field generator at a crucial junction, where power conduits converged. "Activating now!" Stone shouted, his fingers dancing across the device's controls. The generator pulsed, sending waves of disruptive energy through the cannon systems. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Energy surges ripped through the battleship's power grid. Feedback loops cascaded through its systems, overwhelming safeguards and failsafes. In the control center, Jake felt the change instantly. The air crackled with uncontrolled energy, and he could see the panic in the Emperor's eyes. "What have you done?" the Orion leader bellowed. Jake didn't answer. Instead, he closed his eyes, focusing on his neural link with the Black Knight's hybrid technology. He reached out, connecting directly to the cannon's control systems. The interface was like nothing he had ever experienced. Raw data flooded his mind, threatening to overwhelm him. Jake gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. He navigated the complex shutdown procedures with inhuman speed, his augmented mind processing information faster than any organic brain could manage. The Emperor, realizing what was happening, made a desperate lunge for Jake, but it was too late. With a final mental command, Jake initiated the shutdown sequence. The Omega cannon's core flared brilliantly, then began to dim. The Emperor's anguished cry was drowned out by the sound of tearing metal. The battleship was coming apart at the seams, no longer able to contain the forces it had unleashed. "All teams, evacuate immediately," Jake ordered, his voice strained from the mental exertion. As the Black Knights and Stone's team raced for their extraction points, Jake turned to face the Emperor one last time. The once mighty Orion leader stood amid the ruins of his great weapon, his dreams of conquest crumbling around him. Jake allowed himself a grim smile before sprinting towards the nearest escape pod. The battle for Earth's survival had reached its climax, but the final outcome remained uncertain. As chunks of the disintegrating battleship hurtled past his viewport, Jake could only hope that their audacious attempt had been enough to save humanity from annihilation. Annihilation. As the escape pod hurtled away from the disintegrating battleship, Jake's neural link with the Omega cannon systems suddenly flared back to life. "Damn it," he growled, realizing the shutdown sequence hadn't fully completed. The weapon was still active, its power fluctuating dangerously. Jake keyed his comm. "All units, this is Commander Hawkins. The Omega cannon is still operational. We need to go back in." "Copy that, Commander." Major Stone's voice crackled over the channel. "My team is already working on establishing safe corridors for re-entry." Jake's pod reversed course, maneuvering through a field of debris. He could see other Black Knight pods following suit, their engines leaving trails of blue plasma in the vacuum. As they approached the fractured hull of the Emperor's flagship, Jake's tactical display lit up with new threats. Swarms of small, agile objects poured out from hidden launch bays. "Sir," Lisa's voice cut in, "we're detecting multiple autonomous combat drones. They're engaging our forces both in space and inside the ship." Jake gritted his teeth. "The Emperor's last line of defense. All right, team, we'll have to fight our way through. Stone, what's your status on those safe corridors?" "First one's up, sir," Stone replied, his voice strained. "We've got portable shield generators creating a path from your entry point to the main power core. But the quantum field is making things unpredictable." The escape pod shuddered as it passed through a section of twisted metal. Jake could see flickering energy fields ahead, Stone's team's handiwork providing a lifeline through the chaos. "All Knights, form up on me," Jake ordered. "We're going for the power cores. Manual disconnect is our only option now." As they docked with the remnants of the battleship, Jake's team was immediately met with resistance. Combat drones, sleek and deadly, swarmed towards them. The confined space of the corridors worked to the humans' advantage, funneling the drones into a kill zone. Jake ducked under a drone's energy beam, feeling the heat sear past his helmet. He returned fire, his weapon's smart targeting system picking out vulnerable spots in the drone's armor. "Push forward," he shouted, leading the charge through the disintegrating ship. The team fought their way through corridors that seemed to shift and warp around them. Gravity fluctuated wildly, forcing the soldiers to magnetize their boots one moment and leap weightlessly the next. As they neared the power core chamber, a violent tremor shook the ship. Jake stumbled, catching himself against a wall that felt strangely insubstantial. "Stone, what's happening?" he called out. "The quantum field generator is interacting with the cannon's energy output," Stone's voice came back, filled with static. "It's creating some kind of temporal distortion. Be careful, Commander. We're seeing sections of the ship phasing in and out of normal space-time." Jake looked back at his team, their faces grim behind their visors. "You heard the man. Watch your step and stay close." They pressed on, fighting through waves of drones and navigating past chunks of ship that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Finally, they reached the massive doors of the power core chamber. Inside, the scene was one of awe-inspiring chaos. Huge energy conduits pulsed with power, arcs of electricity jumping between them. At the center stood the Omega cannon's primary core, a pillar of swirling, multicolored energy that hurt to look at directly. "All right, team," Jake said, scanning the room. "We need to disconnect those conduits, carefully." They split into groups, each taking a different power coupling. Jake approached the largest one, its surface crackling with energy. He reached out, his hand hovering over the release mechanism. "On my mark," he called out. 3, 2, 1, now!" They all moved simultaneously, disengaging the power couplings. The effect was immediate and violent. The core pulsed, sending a shockwave of energy through the room. Jake was thrown backward, his armor absorbing most of the impact as he slammed into a wall. "Status report," he barked, struggling to his feet. "2 down, Commander," Lisa's voice came through. "But the energy buildup is intensifying. We might not be able to get them all before—" Her words were cut off as another tremor rocked the ship. This one felt different, more fundamental, as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. "Stone!" Jake called out. "What's happening out there?" "The temporal distortion is expanding, sir," Stone replied, his voice barely audible through the interference. "It's affecting our comms, our nav systems. We're losing control of the situation fast." Jake looked around at his team, then at the remaining power couplings. The decision crystallized in his mind. "All units, fall back to the extraction point," he ordered. "That's an order. I'll finish this myself." Before anyone could protest, Jake charged towards the next coupling. As he reached for it, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Through a rent in the ship's hull, he could see a new fleet of Orion warships approaching in the distance. The battle for Earth was a long way to go, and time was running out. As Jake processed the sight of the approaching Orion warships, another violent tremor rocked the ship. The floor beneath his feet seemed to ripple, and he stumbled, barely keeping his balance. "Commander!" Lisa's voice crackled through his comm. "The temporal distortions are intensifying. We need to move, now!" Jake gritted his teeth and lunged for the next power coupling. As his hand touched the release mechanism, he felt a sudden shift in gravity. His body became weightless for a split second before slamming back down onto the deck with crushing force. "Everyone, activate your suit's gravitational stabilizers," he ordered, struggling to his feet. The Black Knights complied, their advanced armor compensating for the wildly fluctuating gravity. Jake looked around the chamber, watching as sections of the ship seemed to fold in on themselves, only to reform in impossible configurations. The very fabric of space-time was coming apart around them. "Stone, what's our status on that extraction point?" Jake called out as he and his team fought their way through the disintegrating corridors. Stone's voice came back, laden with static. "We've got a path for you, Commander, but it's not stable. The quantum field generator is overloading. We're trying to maintain the energy corridor, but it's not looking good." As if to emphasize Stone's words, a section of the corridor ahead of them suddenly vanished, revealing the void of space beyond. Jake's team halted, staring at the gaping hole in disbelief. "Lisa, find us another route," Jake ordered, his mind racing through their limited options. "On it, sir," Lisa replied, her fingers flying over her wrist-mounted computer. "There's an alternate path through the auxiliary maintenance shafts. It's tight, but it should get us to the extraction point." Jake nodded. "Lead the way." The team navigated through narrow crawl spaces, their progress hampered by falling debris and unpredictable gravity shifts. Jake could hear the groaning of metal all around them, the ship's superstructure slowly tearing itself apart. As they emerged from the maintenance shafts into a larger corridor, Jake's comm crackled to life. "Commander Hawkins, this is Admiral Chen. We've got extraction shuttles inbound to your position, but we're facing heavy resistance from combat drones and debris. ETA is uncertain." "Copy that, Admiral," Jake replied, his voice strained as he helped a teammate over a twisted bulkhead. "We'll be there." They pressed on, using their suits' enhanced capabilities to overcome the ship's increasingly hostile environment. Gravity reversed without warning, sending them careening towards the ceiling. Jake activated his magnetic boots just in time, adhering to the metal surface as debris flew past them. "Watch it!" he called out, narrowly avoiding a piece of machinery that phased into existence inches from his face before disappearing again. As they neared the extraction point, Jake could see Stone's team working feverishly around the quantum field generator. The device pulsed with energy, each wave sending ripples through the air. "Stone, status report!" Jake shouted over the din of tearing metal and energy discharges. Stone looked up, his face visible through his helmet visor. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked. "The generator's going critical, sir. We can't shut it down, but we might be able to use its implosion to our advantage." Jake's mind raced, weighing their options. "Explain." "If we set it to overload in a controlled manner," Stone continued, his hands never stopping their work on the device, "we can use the implosion to counteract the Omega cannon's remaining energy. It'll destroy the ship, but it might save Earth." Jake nodded grimly. "Do it. How long do we have?" Stone glanced at his wrist computer. 5 minutes, maybe less." "All right, people, let's move," Jake ordered, helping Stone's team gather their equipment. As they worked, a massive tremor shook the ship. Jake looked up to see a huge breach forming in the hull, the void of space visible beyond flickering force fields. "We need to cross that to reach the extraction point," Lisa said, her voice tight with tension. Jake assessed the situation quickly. "I've got an idea," he said, activating his suit's built-in grappling system. With practiced precision, he fired a series of high-tensile cables across the gap, creating a makeshift bridge. "Move, move, move!" he shouted, urging his team forward. They crossed the breach one by one, the grappling lines creaking under their weight. Jake went last, disconnecting the cables as he moved. Just as he reached the other side, the force fields failed completely, and the section they just left was torn away into space. "Admiral Chen, we're at the extraction point," Jake reported, his breath coming in short gasps. "Where are those shuttles?" "Incoming now, Commander," Chen replied. "Brace for pickup." Jake looked at Stone, who was making final adjustments to the quantum field generator. "How much time?" Stone's expression was grim. 30 seconds. As if on cue, they heard the roar of shuttle engines. Through the breach in the hull, Jake could see the extraction shuttles approaching, their hulls scarred from impacts with debris. "Everyone, gather around the generator," Jake ordered. "Stone, what's the plan?" Stone activated a final sequence on the device. "The generator's building energy field should create a bubble of stable spacetime around us. It's our best shot at a clean extraction." The shuttles drew closer, their tractor beams locking onto the energy bubble surrounding the human strike teams. Jake felt a slight pull as they began to move. "Hang on!" he shouted, gripping a nearby railing. As they were pulled away from the disintegrating battleship, Jake saw a brilliant flash of light through the breach. The Omega cannon's remaining systems had gone critical, creating a localized singularity at the heart of the Emperor's flagship. The extraction shuttles accelerated, fighting against the increasing gravitational anomalies. Jake watched as the massive Orion vessel began to implode, consumed by the very power it had sought to control. "All teams, report status," Jake called out as they sped away from the destruction. One by one, his team sounded off. They were battered, exhausted, but alive. As the shuttles raced towards the safety of the Allied fleet, Jake allowed himself a moment of relief. They had destroyed the Omega cannon and escaped the Emperor's trap. But as he watched the approaching Orion reinforcements through the shuttle's viewport, he knew their battle was not nearly finished. The fight for Earth and the galaxy was entering its final, decisive phase, and the outcome still hung in the balance. Balance. Jake's eyes narrowed as he assessed the approaching Orion reinforcements. The extraction shuttles accelerated away from the imploding flagship, but a sudden lurch sent everyone stumbling. "What's happening?" Jake demanded, steadying himself against the bulkhead. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, strained and urgent. "The singularity from the Omega cannon's destruction is expanding rapidly. It's pulling us back." Jake felt his stomach drop as the shuttle's engines whined in protest. Through the viewport, he could see the other extraction vehicles struggling against the immense gravitational pull. The imploding battleship warped and twisted, collapsing into a swirling vortex of light and energy. "Admiral Chen, we need assistance," Jake called into his comm. "We're being drawn back into the singularity." "Hold on, Commander," Chen's voice came back, clear and determined. "We're deploying gravity nullifiers now." Moments later, Jake saw a series of sleek devices launch from the Titan's forge. They positioned themselves between the shuttles and the growing singularity, pulsing with energy. Suddenly, the crushing pull lessened, and Jake felt the shuttle surge forward. "It's working," the pilot exclaimed. "We're breaking free." As they raced towards the safety of the Titan's forge, Jake's attention was drawn to the massive Orion reinforcement fleet. Despite the swarm of nanobots slowing their advance, the enemy ships pressed on relentlessly. A brilliant flash lit up space, followed by another and another. Jake's eyes widened as he realized what he was seeing. "Are those railguns?" Stone nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Looks like General Stryker's activated the long-range defense system. Those asteroid bases weren't just for show after all." The Orion fleet's formation began to break apart as hypervelocity projectiles tore through their ranks. Ships exploded or veered off course, creating chaos in the enemy lines. As their shuttle docked with the Titan's forge, Jake and Stone wasted no time. Ignoring their exhaustion and the protests of the medical teams, they rushed to the station's command center. Admiral Chen turned as they entered, his face etched with concern. "Commander Hawkins, Major Stone, I'm glad to see you made it. What's the status of the Omega cannon?" Jake quickly briefed the Admiral on their mission's outcome, detailing the destruction of the Emperor's flagship and the unexpected singularity. Chen listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. The destruction of the Omega cannon has created a power vacuum in the Orion forces, Chen said, gesturing to a holographic display of the battlefield. We're seeing confusion in their ranks. It's time to press our advantage. With a series of swift commands, Chen activated a new system. We've developed an electronic warfare package using adapted alien tech. Let's see how the Orions handle a little misinformation. The effect was almost immediate. On the display, Orion ships began to break formation, some even turning their weapons on each other. Jake watched in amazement as the once coordinated assault devolved into chaos. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Dr. Reeves and Dr. Harper." The scientists' faces appeared on a nearby screen, their expressions a mix of excitement and concern. "Admiral Chen," Dr. Reeves began, "we've analyzed the data from the Omega cannon's destruction. The implosion has created spatial anomalies throughout the battlefield. They're unpredictable and extremely dangerous." Dr. Harper chimed in, her fingers flying over a keyboard. "We're working on a way to map these anomalies. It could give our ships a significant advantage in navigation." Chen nodded grimly. "Good work, doctors. We'll need every edge we can get." Turning to his crew, Chen's voice rang out with authority. "Prepare the forge for combat configuration. It's time to show the Orions what this station can really do." Jake and Stone watched in awe as the massive space station began to transform. Huge sections of the outer hull shifted and reconfigured, revealing an array of weapon systems that had been concealed beneath. The Titan's forge now bristled with firepower, a fortress ready for war. As the station took up a defensive position between Earth and the approaching Orion forces, long-range sensors detected a new threat. The singularity created by the Omega cannon's destruction was growing, stabilizing instead of dissipating as expected. Jake studied the sensor readings, his mind racing. "Admiral," he said, turning to Chen, "that singularity could be an even bigger threat than the Orion fleet. If it continues to grow—" Chen nodded, understanding the implications. "We need a solution, and fast." Jake's eyes lit up with a dangerous idea. "Sir, what if we use the remaining quantum field generator technology? We could create a controlled implosion to neutralize the singularity." "That's insane," Stone interjected. "The risk would be—" "Enormous," Jake finished. "But it might be our only shot." Before Chen could respond, alarms blared throughout the command center. The Orion reinforcements had broken through the outer defenses and were now engaging the Allied forces in close combat. The space around Earth erupted into chaos. Energy weapons crisscrossed the void, missiles streaked between ships, and debris from destroyed vessels filled the battlefield. The Titan's forge unleashed its full arsenal, each massive weapon creating brilliant flashes visible from Earth's surface. As Jake watched the battle unfold, he noticed a group of Orion ships breaking through the Allied lines, making a run for Earth's orbit. His blood ran cold as he recognized their configuration. "Troop transports," he said, his voice taut with tension. "They're going for a ground invasion." Admiral Chen turned to Jake, his expression grim but determined. "Commander Hawkins, I need you to lead a counteroffensive. Take the new Black Knight fighters and stop those transports before they can reach Earth." Jake nodded, already moving towards the exit. "I'm on it, sir." As he raced towards the hangar bay, Jake's mind whirled with the enormity of the situation. The space battle raged on, the singularity continued to grow, and now Earth faced the threat of a ground invasion. He knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of not just the planet, but all of humanity. Reaching the hangar, Jake found a squad of elite pilots already assembled, their faces a mix of commitment and almost unchecked fear. As he approached the sleek, newly upgraded Black Knight fighter, Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle ahead. "All right, team," he called out, climbing into the cockpit. "Let's show these Orions what happens when they try to invade our home." The hangar bay doors slid open, revealing the chaos of the battlefield beyond. With a roar of engines, Jake and his squadron launched into space, racing to intercept the Orion troop transports before they could reach Earth's atmosphere. As they flew into the fray, Jake knew that this was just the beginning of the most crucial phase of the war. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and he was determined to do whatever it took to ensure humanity's survival. As Jake's Black Knight squadron streaked away from the Titan's forge, the vast expanse of space erupted into a chaotic battlefield. Debris from destroyed ships drifted aimlessly, occasionally illuminated by the flashes of energy weapons and explosions. Jake's eyes narrowed as he focused on the Orion troop transports ahead, their hulls gleaming menacingly as they approached Earth's orbit. "All units, form up on me," Jake commanded, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through his body. "We're going to hit them hard and fast. Use the new pulse cannons to disable their engines and weapon systems." The Black Knights fell into formation, their sleek fighters moving in perfect synchronization. As they closed in on the enemy ships, Jake could see the Earth below, a blue and white marble suspended in the void. The sight steeled his tenacity. "Engage!" Jake shouted, pushing his throttle forward. The squadron split apart, each fighter targeting a separate transport. Jake's Black Knight barreled towards the lead ship, dodging incoming fire with hairpin turns and rolls. He squeezed the trigger, and a burst of concentrated energy erupted from his fighter's pulse cannons. The transport's shields flickered and failed under the assault. Jake's next volley struck true, tearing into the ship's engine housing. The Orion vessel began to list, trailing plasma and debris. "Direct hit," Jake called out. "Everyone, focus fire on their propulsion systems." Across the battlefield, the Black Knights wreaked havoc on the Orion formation. Transport after transport fell out of formation, their engines disabled or weapons silenced. But Jake knew they couldn't afford to let even one ship slip through. As the dogfight raged on, Jake's sensors picked up a small group of transports breaking away from the main force. They were accelerating rapidly, aiming for a gap in Earth's defensive grid. "3 bogies making a run for it," Jake warned his squadron. "Talon 2 and 3, you're with me. The rest of you, mop up here." Jake pushed his fighter to its limits, the G-forces pressing him back into his seat as he gave chase. The fleeing Orion ships were fast, but the Black Knights were faster. As they closed the distance, Jake saw the curvature of the Earth growing larger in his viewport. "We can't let them enter the atmosphere," Jake growled. "Hit them with everything we've got." The 3 Black Knights unleashed a barrage of pulse cannon fire and missiles. 2 of the transports erupted in flames, breaking apart as they tumbled towards Earth. But the 3rd ship managed to slip past, its hull blazing red as it plunged into the atmosphere. "Damn it!" Jake pounded his fist against the console. "Talon 2 and 3, return to the main battle. I'm going after that transport." Without waiting for a response, Jake angled his fighter downward and followed the Orion ship into Earth's atmosphere. Warning alarms blared as the Black Knight shuddered, its hull heating up from the friction of re-entry. As Jake emerged from the ionized plasma surrounding his ship, he found himself streaking across a cloudless sky. Below, he could see the patchwork of fields and the sprawling outline of a city. The Orion transport was ahead, trailing smoke as it descended rapidly. Jake opened a channel to Earth's Defense Command. "This is Commander Hawkins. I'm in pursuit of an Orion transport on collision course with, I think it's heading for Chicago, requesting ground support immediately." "Copy that, Commander," came the swift reply. "General Stryker has mobilized units in your area. Be advised, we're activating the anti-teleportation grid now." As Jake watched, a shimmering energy field began to form over the city below. The Orion transport, seemingly aware of the danger, suddenly changed course. It veered away from the city center, heading for the outskirts where the energy field was weaker. Jake pushed his fighter even harder, closing the gap between him and the enemy ship. He knew he had to stop it before it could land and deploy its troops. With gritted teeth, he lined up his shot and fired one last volley from his pulse cannons. The transport's rear section exploded, sending the ship into an uncontrolled spin. It plummeted towards the ground, crashing into an empty field with a thunderous impact. Jake circled overhead, watching as a plume of smoke rose from the wreckage. "Transport down," he reported, his voice tight. "But I can see movement in the crash site. Looks like we've got Orions on the ground." As Jake maintained his patrol above the crash site, he saw military vehicles converging on the area. Troops poured out, engaging the Orion forces that had survived the impact. The sound of gunfire and energy weapons filled the air. Jake's comm crackled to life with Admiral Chen's voice. "Commander Hawkins, status report." "Sir, we've neutralized most of the transports, but a few made it through. I've just taken one down outside Chicago, but there are reports of similar incidents worldwide." "Understood, Commander. We need you back up here. The battle's just the beginning, and we've got a new situation developing." Jake looked up, his eyes searching the sky. Through gaps in the clouds, he could see flashes of light from the ongoing space battle. Somewhere up there, the fate of Earth was still hanging in the balance. "On my way, Admiral," Jake replied, pulling back on his control stick. As his Black Knight climbed back towards space, he cast one last glance at the battle raging below. He knew that every second counted, and the war for Earth's survival was entering its most critical phase. The nose of Jake's fighter broke through the upper atmosphere, the blue sky fading to the star-studded blackness of space. As he rejoined the main battle, his sensors lit up with new threats and opportunities. The Orion fleet was in disarray, but the fight was far from finished. With a deep breath, Jake plunged back into the fray, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Jake's Black Knight fighter rejoined the main battle, the chaos of space combat enveloped him once more. The Orion fleet, though in disarray, still posed a significant threat. Jake's eyes narrowed as he spotted their flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed the surrounding ships. "All units, form up on me," Jake commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "We're going after their flagship." The Black Knights fell into formation behind Jake, their engines glowing bright against the backdrop of space. As they approached the Orion flagship, a hail of energy bolts and missiles erupted from its surface. "Evasive maneuvers," Jake shouted, rolling his fighter to avoid a barrage of plasma fire. The squadron scattered, each pilot using their advanced training to weave through the deadly storm. Jake noticed a shimmering distortion in space nearby, one of the spatial anomalies created by the Omega Cannon's destruction. "Use the anomalies for cover," he ordered, diving his fighter into the distortion. The Black Knights followed suit, using the unpredictable spatial warps to mask their approach. As they emerged from the anomalies, Jake's sensors picked up a fluctuation in the flagship's shielding. "I've got a weakness," he reported. "Near the main reactor core. Concentrate all fire on that point." The squadron unleashed a coordinated assault, their pulse cannons and missiles striking the vulnerable area with pinpoint accuracy. The flagship's shields flickered and faltered under the onslaught. Meanwhile, aboard the Titan's forge, Major Derek Stone and his team worked feverishly to contain the growing singularity. The quantum field generator hummed ominously, its readouts flashing warning signals. "The output's becoming unstable," Dr. Harper warned, her fingers flying over the controls. Stone's mind focused as he assessed the situation. "If we don't stabilize it now, we'll lose containment." Without hesitation, he strode towards the generator's main control panel. "I'm going to adjust the settings manually." "Major, the radiation levels—" Dr. Reeves began, but Stone cut him off. "We don't have a choice," he said grimly, reaching for the controls. As Stone's hands moved across the panel, alarms blared throughout the chamber. He could feel the heat of the radiation through his protective suit, but he pushed on, focusing on the task at hand. Slowly, the generator's output began to stabilize. On Earth, General William Stryker stood in the command center of a hidden military base, watching holographic displays of the global situation. Orion ground forces had made significant incursions, but humanity was far from defenseless. "Activate Protocol Omega," Stryker ordered, his voice firm. Across the planet, hidden facilities sprang to life. Hangar doors slid open, revealing sleek vehicles and advanced weaponry developed from reverse-engineered alien technology. Soldiers donned powered armor suits, hefting energy pulse rifles that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. "Deploy the Special Forces units," Stryker commanded. "Priority targets are marked on your HUDs. Push them back, people." As Earth's defenders mobilized with their new arsenal, the tide of the ground war began to shift. The Orion invaders found themselves facing an unexpectedly fierce resistance, their advance faltering in the face of humanity's hidden technological edge. Back in space, the Titan's forge pushed deeper into the heart of the Orion fleet. Its massive weapons array blazed continuously, tearing through enemy formations. But the constant barrage was taking its toll on the station. Chief Engineer Sarah Collins's voice crackled over the intercom in the command center. "Admiral, we've got multiple system failures across the power grid. We can't maintain this level of output much longer." Admiral Marcus Chen's expression remained stoic as he considered their options. "What about the experimental power distribution algorithm?" "It's our best shot," Collins replied, "but it's never been tested under these conditions." Chen nodded grimly. "Do it. Reroute all non-essential power to maintain our offensive capabilities." As Collins implemented the new algorithm, the Forge's weapons surged with renewed energy. The Orion ships closest to the station were caught in the amplified barrage, their hulls buckling under the assault. Amidst the chaos of battle, the Forge's long-range sensors detected an anomalous energy signature approaching the outer edges of the solar system. Chen ordered a cautious approach, dispatching a diplomatic probe to investigate. As the probe neared the source of the signature, it revealed a massive vessel of unknown design. The ship dwarfed even the largest vessels in either fleet, its sleek hull gleaming with an almost ethereal quality. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. It's not like anything we've seen before." Chen moved to the officer's station, studying the complex data packet scrolling across the screen. "Get our best analysts on this now. We need to know what we're dealing with." As Earth's forces grappled with this new development, Commander Hawkins and his Black Knights pressed their attack on the Orion flagship. Their concentrated fire had finally breached the enemy vessel's shields, exposing its vulnerable reactor core. "This is our chance," Jake called out to his squadron. "Follow me in. We're going to end this." Jake's fighter dove towards the flagship, leading the assault through a gauntlet of defensive fire. Explosions blossomed around them as they weaved through the chaos, each pilot pushing their skills to the limit. With a final burst of speed, Jake's Black Knight closed in on the exposed reactor. His targeting computer locked on, and he squeezed the trigger. A stream of energy bolts struck true, penetrating deep into the flagship's core. As Jake and his squadron pulled away, the Orion vessel began to break apart. Explosions rippled along its hull, and its massive form started to list to one side. But even as victory seemed within reach, Jake's sensors picked up a surge of energy from the flagship's command center. "Admiral," Jake reported, his voice tense, "I'm detecting some kind of teleportation attempt from the Orion command deck. They're trying to escape." Admiral Chen's response was immediate. "All nearby Allied ships, intercept those teleportation signals. We cannot let the Orion leadership slip away." As the space battle reached its crescendo, the unknown vessel continued its approach. Earth's analysts worked frantically to decipher its message, knowing that the arrival of this new player could change everything. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, with victory tantalizingly close, yet still not assured. As the Allied forces pressed their advantage, a new signal caught the attention of every sensor array in the system. A massive vessel, unlike anything seen before, appeared at the edge of the solar system. Its sleek, otherworldly design dwarfed even the largest ships in the human and Orion fleets. The ship's arrival sent ripples of uncertainty through both sides of the conflict. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the tension on the Titan's Forge's bridge. "All Allied ships, stand down. I repeat, stand down. Cease fire immediately." Jake Hawkins, still hovering near the crippled Orion flagship, received the order with a mix of confusion and frustration. "Sir?" he questioned, his finger still poised over the trigger. "You heard me, Commander," Chen replied, his tone brooking no argument. "Fall back to defensive positions around Earth. That's an order." As Jake reluctantly complied, leading his Black Knight squadron away from the Orion vessels, he noticed the enemy ships powering down their weapon systems. The space around them, moments ago filled with energy blasts and explosions, fell eerily quiet. The enormous unknown vessel began to deploy smaller craft, each one still impressive in size. These ships maneuvered with impossible grace, positioning themselves between the human and Orion forces. Jake watched in awe as they projected energy fields that seemed to absorb any stray weapons fire. This is Admiral Marcus Chen of Earth's Allied Forces. Chen's voice echoed across all communication channels. We request parley with the newly arrived vessel and the remaining Orion fleet. As Jake and his squadron assumed their defensive positions around Earth, he couldn't help but marvel at the sudden shift in the battle's dynamics. The Orion fleet, once a formidable and coordinated force, now seemed to be in disarray. Some ships drifted aimlessly, while others appeared to be arguing amongst themselves over internal communications. On Earth's surface, General William Stryker stood in the command center, his face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. He watched as the unknown ship's smaller vessels created a buffer zone in space. "All units, hold your positions," Stryker ordered, his voice carried to every corner of the globe. "Contain and isolate all Orion ground forces. Do not engage unless directly threatened." Across the planet, Earth's defenders halted their advance. Powered armor suits stood motionless on the edges of alien-controlled territories, their energy weapons humming with restrained power. The abrupt ceasefire left an unsettling quiet on battlefields that had been raging just moments before. Stryker turned to his communications officer. "Get me a secure line to every world leader. We need to present a unified front, now more than ever." Back on the Titan's forge, Chief Engineer Sarah Collins and her team worked feverishly to stabilize the station's systems. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits as they rerouted power and replaced damaged components. "Admiral," Collins called over the intercom, her voice strained, "we've managed to stabilize the primary systems, but we're still operating at reduced capacity." Chen nodded, even though Collins couldn't see him. "Good work. Prepare the station for potential diplomatic functions. We may need to host some very important guests soon." As the forge slowly maneuvered into a neutral position between Earth, the Orion fleet, and the new arrival, Chen's attention was drawn to an urgent report from one of the monitoring stations near the contained singularity. "Sir," a science officer reported, "we're detecting temporal distortions at the site where Major Stone's shuttle disappeared. There are energy spikes consistent with the quantum field generator's signature." Chen's eyes widened slightly. "Are you saying Stone and his team might still be alive?" "It's possible, sir," the officer replied. "They could be trapped in a time dilation field. We need more data to be certain." Before Chen could respond, the massive, unknown vessel initiated formal contact. A flood of complex data packets poured into the Forge's communication systems, overwhelming their processors for a moment. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving legal documents." They're identifying themselves as the Galactic Peacekeeping Force. They're citing authority to arbitrate interstellar conflicts. And, sir, there's a lot here about galactic law and historical precedents. Chen's mind raced as he processed this new information. "Get our best analysts on this immediately. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we engage in any negotiations." He turned to his executive officer. "Contact Earth's political leadership. We need to assemble a diplomatic team, experts in interstellar law, xenobiology, military strategy, anyone who might give us an edge in these talks." As the Titan's forge buzzed with activity, preparing for the unexpected shift from warfare to diplomacy, Chen received an encrypted message on his personal terminal. His eyes narrowed as he read the contents. "Commander," he spoke into his communicator, "I need a covert extraction team. We have a high-value defector from the Orion fleet requesting asylum. This could change everything." In the vast emptiness of space, now eerily calm after the intense battle, the Galactic Peacekeeping Force's massive ship loomed like a silent arbiter. Its presence had transformed the conflict in an instant, shifting the battle from a straightforward military engagement to a complex political and legal challenge. As Earth's leaders scrambled to adapt to this new reality, the future of humanity's place in the galactic community hung in the balance. The next moves in this high-stakes game of interstellar diplomacy would shape the fate of not just Earth, but potentially the entire galaxy. Galaxy. The arrival of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force had shifted the entire paradigm of the conflict, transforming a desperate battle for survival into a complex diplomatic challenge. Admiral Marcus Chen stood at the forefront of Earth's hastily assembled diplomatic team, his years of military experience now being put to an unexpected test. As the Titan's forge maneuvered into position for the impending negotiations, Chen reviewed the data packets from the GPF one last time. "Our primary objective is to establish our right to self-defense," Chen briefed his team. "We need to make it clear that Earth was the victim of unprovoked Orion aggression." The diplomatic shuttle departed the forge, carrying Chen and his team towards the massive GPF vessel. As they approached, the sheer scale of the alien ship became apparent, dwarfing even the largest human or Orion vessels. Inside the GPF ship, Chen and his team were escorted to a vast chamber that seemed to defy the laws of physics, its boundaries shifting and shimmering with an otherworldly energy. The GPF representatives, beings of light and energy rather than flesh and blood, coalesced before them. "Representatives of Earth," a melodious voice echoed in their minds, "we have observed your conflict with the Orion Empire. Present your case." Chen stepped forward, his voice steady despite the awe-inspiring surroundings. "Honored members of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, Earth did not seek this war. We were attacked without provocation, our cities destroyed, our people slaughtered. We fought only to survive." As Chen spoke, holographic displays materialized around them, showing footage of the Orion invasion and humanity's desperate defense. The GPF representatives observed silently, their energy forms pulsing with what seemed to be intense concentration. "We acknowledge your right to self-defense," the GPF voice resonated. "Your species has demonstrated remarkable resilience and ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. We propose a solution that will ensure Earth's security and introduce humanity to the greater galactic community." Chen leaned forward, his heart racing. "We're listening. Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Confederation," the GPF explained. "Your Black Knight Squadron has proven its worth in combat. They will serve as humanity's representatives in a new interstellar peacekeeping force, working alongside other species to maintain galactic stability." As Chen processed this extraordinary offer, an urgent communication from Earth interrupted the proceedings. The temporal distortions at the site of the contained singularity had intensified dramatically. Back on Earth, General William Stryker watched in astonishment as a brilliant flash of light erupted at the singularity site. From the blinding glow emerged a battered shuttle, its hull barely holding together. "This is Major Derek Stone," a voice crackled over the comms, "requesting immediate assistance and decontamination protocols." Stryker's eyes widened. "Stone? My God, man, you've been gone for months." "Months?" Stone's voice was filled with disbelief. "Sir, from our perspective, it's been years." As Stone and his team were rushed to a secure medical facility, they began to share the wealth of knowledge they had acquired during their time trapped in the singularity's time dilation field. Their advanced understanding of quantum mechanics and singularity manipulation proved invaluable in stabilizing the remaining spatial anomalies throughout the solar system. Meanwhile, Commander Jake Hawkins received word of Earth's potential new role in the galactic community. Recognizing the significance of this opportunity, he immediately began organizing joint exercises between the Black Knights and GPF forces. "All right, Knights," Jake addressed his squadron. "We're about to show these GPF representatives what humans are capable of. Remember, we're not just flying for Earth anymore, we're flying for humanity's place among the stars." The joint exercises were a spectacular display of human adaptability, combined with advanced alien technology. The Black Knights executed maneuvers that pushed the limits of their enhanced fighters, seamlessly integrating with the GPF's own forces in simulated peacekeeping scenarios. As the demonstrations concluded, Jake could sense a shift in the GPF's perception of humanity. Where there had been cautious curiosity, there was now unmistakable respect. On the surface of Earth, General Stryker coordinated the final push to reclaim territories still held by Orion ground forces. The reverse-engineered alien technology, combined with tactics honed during the long months of resistance, proved decisive. Stryker watched from a command vehicle as powered armor units stormed the last Orion stronghold. Energy weapons flashed, and within hours the alien defenders raised signals of surrender. "All units cease fire," Stryker ordered. "Prepare to secure prisoners and establish containment zones." As Earth's forces solidified their control, news arrived of the Orion High Command's unconditional surrender. The combined pressure from humanity's unexpected resilience, the GPF's intervention, and internal fractures within the Orion Empire had finally broken their will to continue the fight. Sub-Commander Krell, the Orion defector who had sought asylum, proved to be an invaluable asset. His insights into Orion culture and technology laid the groundwork for a cultural exchange program that would pave the way for peaceful relations between humans and reformed Orion societies. Aboard the Titan's Forge, Chief Engineer Sarah Collins oversaw the integration of GPF technology into the station's systems. The Forge was being transformed from a weapon of war into a symbol of humanity's new role in the galaxy. Reroute power from the main weapon systems to the new diplomatic suites, Collins instructed her team, and make sure the manufacturing bays are recalibrated for peacetime production. We've got a lot of rebuilding to do. As the solar system settled into an uneasy peace, humanity stood on the brink of a new era. The stars, once a source of terror and invasion, now beckoned with the promise of exploration and discovery. The Black Knights, their armor gleaming with new insignias representing both Earth and the Galactic Confederation, prepared to take their first steps into a much larger universe.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.